vertical into the atmosphere. If we had a strong wind, it would be blowing laterally along the ground, so you would have fumes a lot closer to the ground, spreading out away from where the fire is actually happening. This situation is actually good as far as contaminating areas around where the chemical fire is. So the smoke plume is going vertically into the atmosphere. The atmosphere is really stable today too. We have a big ridge of high pressure, so there's not a lot of mixing in the atmosphere, so the chances of the smoke plume kind of coming back down to the ground at a different location is probably pretty small. So as far as weather conditions go for a situation like this, it's probably the optimal situation for areas surrounding the Crosby area close to where this fire is happening.
And that's the one thing that we learned recently with the ITC fire was that the closer, when we saw the plume of smoke going laterally, the concern was that it was going to lower to the ground, and that's when really the increased air quality concerns would kick in. So we're looking at this, seeing the plume of smoke going straight up in the air, and that is, I guess, the optimal, as you mentioned, yes, situation for at least the plume of smoke. It
is. We have very light winds, so the plume goes up, and if we get a wide shot of the smoke plume, you'll probably notice a column of smoke going up, and then it'll probably flatten out at some point in the atmosphere, where a very stable layer in the atmosphere. So you'll probably see kind of a T shape, if you will, or an L shape, where the smoke plume kind of flattens out high above, a couple of thousand feet above the ground, and there's probably not going to be a lot of mixing down from there because there's just not a lot of instability in the atmosphere. There's not a lot of vertical mixing, which is a good thing. So I would think that the threat to areas surrounding this chemical fire is probably at a minimum. I would imagine the shelter in place is probably a precautionary measure at this point in time. I can't say that for sure. I'm just speculating at this point, but I would imagine that it's precautionary until they can kind of assess the situation, determine exactly what's going on, and determine what the actual hazard level is for those areas immediately surrounding the fire.
All right, Eric, thanks so much. I want to get to our colleague, Channel 2 investigator Mario Diaz. He is joining us now from the newsroom with more information on Chemco.
That's right, Andy. I can tell you that Chemco is part of a organization that the parent company here is a company called ORG Chemical Holdings, and that is a company that's based out of Austin. Its CEO is a gentleman named John Foley. Now, he is listed as the president of Chemco also according to the Society of Chemical Manufacturers and Affiliates. So obviously this is an organization that has deep ties to Texas, not only with this plant, but according to records, to the capital city of Austin, where it's based out of, according to records with regards to ORG, the parent company. As you indicated a few minutes ago here, Andy, this is a company that specializes in brake fluid products, oil field products, cement grinding products, and they pride themselves as being a specialty chemical company that was acquired by private equity in 2012, but they deliver superior specialty chemical manufacturing and toll processing services, they say, to some of the world's largest chemical companies. They now find themselves in this situation here where they're trying to not only address the fires, but the reports of 2 people injured, according to the sheriff's office. Interesting note to point out here also, Andy and Christine, as we talk about this fire, just a few weeks ago that I was up at the Teaks facility in College Station, where they train the firefighters from various backgrounds all over the world, including some of the firefighters here on the ship channel. So as they look at this fire and they come onto the scene here, their number one goal is to assess this fire and where it is burning. They're not going to just rush right in as you would with regards to, let's say, a house fire. They're going to set up a perimeter. They're going to examine where the smoke is going, and they're going to try to get as much information as they can from the plant themselves to try to identify what they're going to be dealing with, and at the same time what they're going to be battling here over the course of the next few minutes to few hours. But the one thing that they do have right now on their side is the fact that it is daytime. They can get an idea of where this smoke is going. And the fact is you have a clear day without any type of situation with the weather being a big factor here. But again, this is the Chemco facility out in Crosby. Andy and Christine, back to you.
All right, Mario, thanks so much. We just received video of this fire. This is from one of our viewers, Stephanie Richardson. A reminder that both Crosby ISD and Sheldon ISD schools have issued a shelter in place because of this fire. But again, as Eric pointed out, Christine, this plume of smoke it's just going straight up into the air because the winds are somewhat calm at this hour. So we're not really seeing that smoke sticking around the lower levels of the atmosphere, which of course is good news. And these school districts that we've been mentioning, Sheldon ISD and Crosby ISD, obviously want to take every possible step that they can to make sure that students and faculty remain safe. So that's why those shelter-in-place orders have been issued. Yeah, certainly following the ITC storage facility fire and what actions were taken following that. Certainly we don't want to speculate if there's any air quality concerns in those areas at this point, but those two schools are just taking the necessary precautions just to be on the safe side. And we were just hearing from Mario, again, this company, ORG, is the parent company of this chemical facility. They produce these, their specialty chemicals, cement grinding products, oil field products, things of that nature. Right, and we don't have a clear indication of what exactly is burning. You mentioned some of the different chemicals that are processed and manufactured there, but we don't know exactly what's burning right now. But you can see it's coughing out an awful lot of thick black smoke, and certainly that is a cause for concern every time we see this kind of thing happen at one of these facilities that manufactures chemicals. You have to take every precaution possible, not just the surrounding school districts, but obviously for the employees who are working at these facilities as well. And according to Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, he tweeted out about 15 minutes ago that it was his understanding that 2 employees were possibly injured in this fire. And again, if you are just joining us here, we're coming up on 11:40, 20 minutes before the noon hour. To the left, you are looking at live pictures from Sky 2 over a chemical plant fire. This is in East Harris County in the Crosby area, the Chemco chemical plant fire. Unclear what's burning at this hour, but we know that this particular facility manufactures and processes several different types of products, including brake fluid products, antifreeze products, oil field products, and glycol products. And right now, we do want to get to a viewer named Wendy Royal, I believe her last name is, that actually felt the explosion that caused this fire. I believe we have her on the phone right now. Wendy, are you there?
Yes.
Wendy, can you explain what you know and what you felt?
I was at home with my dad eating breakfast, and we felt an impact on the house that shook the windows, and we immediately thought something fell or something hit the house. And so my dad started looking around and didn't see anything. So we thought, well, maybe the construction that's going on on the main road in the subdivision was, something went on up there. And then I got the notification on my phone about the explosion.
And Wendy, how close do you live? How close is your house from this chemical plant?
We are actually in Humble. We're off of Will Clayton and Timber Forest. So we're closer to the airport than we are to the refinery.
So you're a pretty good distance away and you felt this?
Yes. I mean, it was definitely something that we could feel. I mean, it shook the whole house. We didn't know what to think, especially when we didn't see anything. The only thing that told us that was what it was getting the notification from the news app. And
Humble and Crosby aren't necessarily that close. Can you see the smoke from where you are?
There's too many trees around where we are right here. But I can say that we were afraid when we first heard that it was a refinery, that it was going to be Chemco. The prior owner of Chemco was a good family friend of ours who passed away a few years ago. So our thoughts and prayers are with the employees there that may have been injured.
Yes, certainly. Wendy, we had heard that 2 employees were possibly injured in this. What are your plans right now? What are you doing right now?
Well, I have a doctor's appointment in the woodlands. I injured my ankle yesterday. So, you know, our plans are just to do that and, you know, kind of keep tabs on the news and what's going on with the explosion and hope that everyone stays safe there that's involved.
Well, Wendy, we certainly appreciate you calling in, and for you and everyone in that area, just be safe, and we'll continue to update you just as soon as we receive more information, but we appreciate you calling in with information.
Thank you so much, and Christine, welcome to Houston.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
Thank you.
All right, this story continuing to develop as we continue to learn more about what is happening at the Chemco chemical plant up in the Crosby area. On the left of your screen is a map. This is just off Highway 90 near Crosby Dayton Road and Ramsey Road, again up in the Crosby area. On the right, you are looking at pictures from our Sky 2. It looks like they're doing a pretty good job of trying to get some water on those flames. Still unclear what exactly is burning, but as we've been telling you throughout the morning, we know that they process and manufacture several different types of chemical products there, and whatever is burning, it is clear that it is producing a lot of thick black choking smoke, which has led to two surrounding school districts, neighboring school districts, Crosby ISD and Sheldon ISD, to issue shelter in places for those students and staff who are in school as we get close to the lunch hour.
And as we just heard from our Mario Diaz here just a little bit ago, just recently following the ITC fire, he went to some sort of a training program to learn exactly what crews are dealing with when they approach a fire of this magnitude or something of this situation. And they don't just, Andy, they don't just rush right in with materials and water to put this out. They have to set up a perimeter, assess what they're dealing with, figure out what kind of chemicals they're dealing with to properly be able to manage and handle putting out a fire like this at a chemical facility like this.
Certainly safety always, Christine, as you mentioned, in situations like this is top of mind. Again, not just for people living in the community, but for our first responders who have to go out there and get these types of situations under control, as well as employees who work at these chemical manufacturing facilities. Certainly policies and procedures are in place to make sure that they are safe. If a situation like this develops where we're looking at a fire and a possible explosion, you can still see quite a bit of smoke coming out of that facility right now. We're still trying to get a better indication for you what exactly is burning. We've been telling you about some of the chemicals that are processed and manufactured there, but again, we don't have a definitive answer for you in terms of what's burning and what's going into the air. We don't know what the air quality is right now. We're not going to jump to any conclusions here, but certainly the color of the smoke, the thick black smoke, is a good indicator that they don't necessarily have this fire under control at this point.
And meteorologist Eric Brait just a few minutes ago was talking about the trajectory of the plume of smoke. It is going straight in the air with wind speeds 5 miles an hour or so around there. So really that's why you're seeing that dark plume of smoke going almost directly into the air as opposed to laterally, which is the direction that we saw that large plume of smoke just a few weeks ago with the ITC fire. So the skyline and what you're seeing is going to look a little bit different, and we're getting a live look from Sky 2 from this the chemical plant where this fire is currently burning. We do know that there are crews on the scene. You can see it looks like at least water being poured. Not certain if they're using any sort of foam like we saw in the previous fire at the ITC facility, but we do know there's crews on the scene working to put this out just as soon as possible. But we know that this is no easy feat and will take likely some time.
Right. From earlier shots that we saw from Sky 2, when Sky 2 was zoomed in on that chemical plant, it looked like that they were dousing some of those flames with water. We can't definitively say that's what they were doing. We don't know if there was some type of leak that was taking place, but it certainly we certainly saw a liquid coming from somewhere right near that area where the flames were. On the left side of your screen right now, you're looking at viewer video. This is video from one of our viewers, Stephanie Richardson. She sent it to us. This is the This is a shot of the smoke and the fire from her vantage point in her neighborhood. We also heard from Wendy, a viewer in Humble, who we spoke with just a few minutes ago, and said that she actually felt the explosion and then looked at her phone and saw that push alert and saw that an explosion had taken place in Chemco up in Crosby. I don't know the exact distance between Humble and Crosby. They're both up in the northeastern part of Harris County, but they're not exactly 2 miles away from each other.
Certainly. And if you are a viewer and you are able to see the smoke and can safely get a video, please send it in. We'd love to be able to provide any vantage point we can of this chemical fire. But yes, again, it's been about 20-25 minutes that we've known about this. We're still waiting to hear from county officials, from the fire marshal, Harris County Fire Marshal's office. We're waiting to hear from Rachel Moreno anytime now, just to provide an update. We realize that people are looking at this, having a lot of questions regarding what is burning right now. And this is something that is probably very disheartening to a lot of folks to see, coming off of weeks of coverage with the ITC storage facility fire, you guys.
Yeah, anybody in eastern Harris County at this point is definitely concerned about this. We've seen a couple of shots here, a wide shot from Sky 2. We've also seen some viewer video. The good news in all this is that the weather is probably optimal in terms of dealing with a situation like this. The smoke plume has gone vertical in the atmosphere. Christine, you mentioned just a couple of moments ago that the wind speeds are essentially calm. They're less than 5 miles per hour in and around the Crosby area. So the heat that's generated from this fire causes an updraft, essentially. So the smoke goes vertical from this chemical plant up into the atmosphere 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet. It reaches a stable layer eventually, and it does begin to spread out laterally, but it's well above the ground. And so this smoke plume is not having a huge impact at this point in time. The other good thing that we have in terms of weather today is that we've got a big ridge of high pressure, and that's a stabilizing influence on our weather pattern. That means there's not a lot of vertical mixing. So once the smoke plume does kind of reach that stable layer in the atmosphere high above and it begins to spread out laterally, there's not a lot of vertical mixing to kind of bring it back to the ground too. So hopefully what happens is that smoke plume remains elevated 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet above ground level, and then eventually the upper level winds kind of carry it away, disperse it, and just take it away, essentially. So we're looking at a situation that's really good. We have the shelter in places that are going on. I'm estimating that those are just precautionary. Of course, they have to do air testing in the area to make sure everything is okay. They want to find out what kind of fumes we're dealing with. But at this point, the weather couldn't probably be any better for a situation like this.
And I was checking out the map up there on the left side of our screen here, and it looks like the winds, albeit light, are coming out of the northwest right now?
Yeah, they're really variable. Anytime you get a wind, those arrows that you see there on the map, those are actually model data, predictions of where the wind should be coming from for this time of day. The actual wind arrows that you see, those little yellow arrows on the circles surrounding the numbers, that's the actual wind direction in any given place. So at Hobby Airport, for instance, we have a wind at 3 miles per hour out of the northeast. In Cleveland, it's 5 miles per hour out of the northwest coming to the southeast. So we call it light and variable wind at this point. And it's essentially calm. There's no prevailing wind direction for us right now. And certainly the areas in eastern Harris County surrounding this chemical fire need to be really, really concerned about what's going on near their homes, near their businesses, where they are. But again, at this point, I think the threat from any chemical fumes that are coming off this chemical fire are at a minimum based on the weather we're seeing.
And in terms of fighting this industrial fire, for the crews on the ground who are responding to this, these are ideal weather conditions for them. For our first responders who are going to be out there trying to get this thing under control.
You know, certainly you don't have wind that could be spreading the fire. Who knows, you know, what the situation is at the chemical plant. If you've got a strong wind going on, that fire could spread to a different part of the plant, certainly. We've got clear weather conditions. We don't have rain. We don't have thunderstorms that we're dealing with. We don't have strong wind. And it's not overly hot. This isn't happening in August when people are trying to fight this fire in 95-degree heat. And
those things make all the difference in the world, don't they?
Well, it just keeps the firefighters fresh. I mean, assuming that this could take a long time to put out, it's quite energy consuming to deal with a fire like this, to put it out, to figure out what's going on. There's a lot of adrenaline going on. So the weather conditions with relatively cool conditions today are certainly good for firefighters, I would imagine.
And we're learning this wasn't the first fire at Chemco. An explosion occurred back in 2010. 3 workers were hurt during that explosion. So we're talking about 9 years ago. There was another issue at the Chemco plant up in the Crosby area in the northeast part of our county.
Yeah, we do know that Chemco, the parent company, is ORG Chemical Holdings. That's the parent company. To sort of reiterate what we're looking at, they process and manufacture like oil field materials, cement grinding products, specialty chemicals, things of that nature. Still no word at this point what exactly we are seeing that is burning at this plant.
And when you look at the images on the right side of your screen from Sky 2, it just saw they were zoomed in just a couple of seconds ago. It looks like that smoke is coming up fast and furious from that plant there. Again, you mentioned just a few of the chemicals that are being processed and manufactured there. Still unclear right now what is burning. We're obviously working to find that out right now, but we're starting to see some more flames, some activity there on the lower right side of your screen. You can see some flames. It's been a few minutes since we've seen some flames, but we're starting to see some activity there on the lower right side of your screen. And it looks like crews on the ground may be spraying water on those flames right there. We've also, you look at this video and you see the smoke, you're going to think, how safe is this air to breathe? We don't have any indication that the air quality is dangerous, is at a dangerous or unhealthy level. We're not sure at this point, but that's certainly something that's going to have to be monitored, especially for all those folks, who live and work up in that part of the county.
We realize that is a question that is top of mind for folks. What is burning? How is this going to impact us, if it is at all? And as Eric was mentioning, the fact that plume of smoke is going straight up appears to be at least fairly okay news considering this situation. And at this point, we do want to bring in Channel 2 Investigates Joel Eisenbaum, standing by to provide a little more information on this company.
Yeah, guys, I'm just kind of looking at these documents for the first time. What I'm staring at right now is actually a Harris County original petition, really an application for temporary and permanent injunctions against Chemco, KMCO LLC. And this was back in 2017. This is basically, in simplest terms, a lawsuit against the company because they were not following the law in terms of air emissions and water emissions. And in that lawsuit, it sort of has a laundry list of infractions that Chemco has over the years. And the one that I thought was most interesting, just glancing at this for the first time now, was back on September 16th. And this is just back in 2016. That's when Harris County Pollution Control received a complaint of this black residue in a creek that was located just downstream of the facility we're talking about. There was also, according to the documentation, a strong gas and waste odor that caused the person who had called it in a headache. So they sent out an investigator, and what I thought was the most interesting sort of synopsis of this thing was, by the end of the investigation, and this is a quote, by the end of the investigation on September 17th, the investigator had an orange-sized knot at the base of her neck and felt lightheaded. That was from investigating some sort of sludge that was deposited just downstream of Chemco. I don't see any notations in terms of what that substance ended up being, but the bottom line is Chemco is not alone with this. This is another chemical plant who has a history of violations. In fact, just since 2013, since May of 2013, we're seeing that TCEQ has assessed penalties against Chemco totaling almost $39,000, $38,870, and those are for violations of Clean Air, Clean Water Acts.
That's a significant amount of money, and that's a significant amount of penalties. I mean, it really adds up there.
I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think that those penalties are roughly on par, and you can't really judge companies by this, but with ITCs during the same time period. And a lot of people have argued over the years that, look, TCEQ is not tough enough on these plants. I mean, they'll muscle up in court and say that you've got to clean up your act, but the fines, a lot of people argue, don't back up that tough talk. I'll keep looking through this paperwork for a few minutes.
All right, Joel, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Time now, 11:57 here on a Tuesday, a very busy Tuesday morning here in Houston. On the left side of your screen, a map showing the Chemco chemical plant where a fire and explosion has occurred just right around 11 o'clock this morning. On the right side of your screen, we've got pictures from Sky 2. A lot of black smoke there, and on the lower right side of your screen, you can see two spots where we're starting to see more fire activity taking place. At least 2 employees were possibly injured. That's according to Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. We have not heard anything from the company at this point. We do know that 2 school districts, 2 neighboring school districts, Sheldon ISD and Crosby ISD, have both issued shelter-in-place orders.
And at this point, we're still waiting to hear from Harris County officials. We're waiting to hear from the fire marshal to get an update. We haven't received a lot of new information in the past hour regarding what exactly it is that we are looking at. We are going to continue staying on the air and providing any information that we can to you. We do have Channel 2 crews headed to the scene right now. We do want to check in with Channel 2's Taisha Walker right now, who is standing by with more information. Hi, Taisha.
Hi, Christine. We just got to the scene several minutes ago. I can tell you that I do smell something burning in the air. I can't quite describe it just yet, but I'm going to step out of the way to show you that plume of smoke and to give you an idea of where we are. So right now, we're just in a residential area. We're along Ramsey Road right now. You could see several firefighter trucks and different first responders out on the scene in front of us. We don't know what exactly is burning. It sort of smells like a tire is burning. I can't quite describe it exactly, but we also don't know how long it's been burning. We haven't been able to speak with anyone yet on camera. As you can imagine, this is the emergency right now. They're trying to get this under control and to keep the public safe right now. But I can tell you that Sheriff Ed Gonzalez with Harris County has been pretty active on Twitter. He did say that he is on the scene here and he's helping to assess what is happening here, as well as to help set up a perimeter to keep the public and other employees safe there. What we can tell you about that facility, we know that it's called Hunting Energy Services. We do know, according to Sheriff Gonzalez, that at least 2 employees might have been injured. We don't know the extent. We also know, according to what you guys just mentioned, that 2 school districts so far have issued a shelter in place out of precaution. Those 2 are Sheldon and Crosby ISD. Again, that is the latest information that we have, not having a chance to speak to anyone. We'll see if we can talk to some neighbors. But again, this is just sort of a staging area for first responders to help get this under control. We will check back in with you when we can. So I'm going to toss it back over to you, Andy and Christine, to see if I can get some more information here on the scene.
All right, Taisha, thanks so much. All right, you're watching Channel 2 News at noon right now, straight up 12 o'clock here on a Tuesday. Our extended coverage of an explosion and fire at the Chemco chemical plant in Crosby continues. On the left side of your screen is a map showing where this plant is. It's up in the northeast part of Harris County. On the right, pictures from Sky 2 showing choking black smoke just being coughed out of this plant, which manufactures and processes several different types of chemicals, including brake fluid products, antifreeze products, oil field products, and glycol products. Yeah,
and again, this has happened about an hour ago, still awaiting word from Harris County officials, but we do know that at least 2 employees have been injured in that chemical fire. We're getting a live look from Sky 2 of that large plume of smoke. Again, this happened just after 11 o'clock. We heard from viewer Wendy Royal in Humble. She says that she felt an explosion. I'm sure her house shook when that happened, and clearly that Humble is not too close to this chemical plant, and we're again waiting word on what exactly is burning right now. We do know that that plume is going almost straight in the air with wind speeds hovering around 5 miles an hour. So we're not seeing it move laterally. We're seeing it go straight up in the air. Still waiting to hear what exactly is being put out by these fumes.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, certainly air quality top of mind for people who live and work around this plant. It's unclear what the air quality levels are right now. For all intents and purposes, the air is okay to breathe. We haven't heard otherwise at this point. But if you're living in a neighborhood, you know, a few miles from this plant or 20 miles from this plant, you know, and you look up in the sky and you see this black cloud of smoke, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's happening here? What's burning? Is the air safe to breathe? All indications point that the air is safe at the moment. We don't have any official telling us any different right now. We also know that the Chemco chemical plant has had issues in the past. There was an explosion and a fire back in December of 2010. 3 workers were hurt. We know that a lawsuit was filed against this company back in 2017 for not following the law in terms of air and water emissions. So certainly, Chemco's had some issues in the past. Yes, and what we do want to reiterate for parents that are probably watching, again, there is a shelter in place out of an abundance of caution at this point for Sheldon and Crosby ISD schools. Again, that's a shelter in place just out of an abundance of caution. We have yet to hear from officials to tell us otherwise if the air quality is a concern, but we wanted to pass that along to any parents that might be watching that have kids in school right now. And on the right side of your screen, you're seeing, it looks like they're pouring some water on those flames right there, which you can see right in the center of your screen, just on the other side of those tanks. You can't really see them right now as Sky 2 continues to move around the plant, keeping a safe distance, of course. But now up in the top right of your screen, you're seeing more flames. I don't know if that's a flare that's burning, yeah, we did just see it. If that's something that's just ignited up there in that part of the plant. Wait for it right there on the right there. Yeah, that looks like a flare. Looks like a flare-up, yeah. Eric Bray is standing by to talk about the forecast, and we know that recently, a few weeks ago at the ITC fire, the wind direction and wind speed really played a role in the way that the plume was moving, and we were talking about the fact that the winds are low today, yes, at least the speed is, so that is at least helpful with this plume of smoke. Exactly. If you had a windy day, a lot of that smoke that you see coming off the fire right now on your screen would be blowing laterally across the ground, and that's exactly what you don't want to see because it's just spreading those pollutants. I mean, I'm sure they're very nasty chemicals along the ground. We've got the heat generated from the fire causes that plume of smoke to rise. Hot air is less dense, it rises, so it gets up 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet in the atmosphere. It reaches a stable layer, and then it begins to spread out laterally there, but it's well above the ground at that point. We've got high pressure in place today. We've got calm winds. It's a combination that's really good in a situation like this because it keeps those, it keeps that smoke plume really high above the ground. Now, ideally what you would want is your upper level winds high in the atmosphere to kind of blow that stuff away. Usually the winds up there are a lot stronger than they are at the surface. That would be your optimal situation. Now, it's interesting, Taisha was talking about the fact that she still smelled something where she was reporting from. So you can't assume that just because the smoke plume is going straight up in the air that there aren't residual chemicals or fumes that are still around the area, which is exactly why they put the shelter in place for the schools in the immediate vicinity. You just can't assume that everything is okay, even though at this point things look okay, which is why, you know, out of an abundance of caution, they issued those shelter in places until they really, you know, definitively determined that the air quality is okay in the area surrounding the fire. All right, Eric, we appreciate that. And we do know that, you know, if you're a viewer and you're watching and you see this plume of smoke and you can safely provide a picture or video, we would love to see it just so we can help continue telling this story of this plume as we learn more information about this. And we do know that someone recently tweeted in some information to us. That's right. I want to share this tweet with you from the Harris County Fire Marshal. The tweet saying that the Harris County Fire Marshal is on scene of a plant fire explosion. A warehouse is currently on fire, trying to determine what products are involved. And Christine, we've been kind of ping-ponging back and forth here throughout our extended coverage, talking about some of the products that are manufactured and processed there. A few, just to name a few, kind of run down the laundry list here. We know that brake fluid products are processed there, antifreeze products, oil field products, and glycol products. There's a couple of others. I don't have them.
Cement grinding products.
Cement grinding products as well.
Yeah, other specialty chemicals.
Right. We, of course, are working to get a hold of folks up there at Chemco to find out a little bit more about the facility itself. And the question on everyone's mind here during the lunch hour is what exactly is burning? I mean, this plant's been burning for well over an hour. We got the information into our newsroom just before we went on the air around 11 o'clock this morning, and shortly after, as we've been mentioning, those shelter-in-place orders were issued for both Sheldon ISD and Crosby ISD, and those two orders still remain in effect at this hour. Yeah,
out of an abundance of caution, and one thing that we have learned is that this is not the first issue that Chemco has had. Back in 2010, 3 employees were hurt from an explosion then, so we're talking 9 years ago, and then investigator Joel Eisenbaum was also talking about some legal issues as recently as 2016, I believe, that this company had as well.
We just got some new information into our newsroom. 1 person unaccounted for, 2 injured. So 1 person, 1 worker unaccounted for remains missing at this hour at the plant. 2 have been injured. And the Harris County Fire Marshal's office tweeting out just a few minutes ago that it appears a warehouse is currently on fire there at the plant. And again, they're on scene. They're trying to determine exactly what products are involved in this fire.
Yeah, a lot of questions. I know that for people that are watching this at home, seeing that large plume of smoke, wondering if there is air quality concerns, if they should be sheltering in a place. We have not received any reports from Harris County officials or anyone else regarding air quality concerns at this hour. We know that plume of smoke is going almost directly in the air, and that's a question we have too. You know, this is something that just a few weeks ago with the ITC storage facility fire, we were questioning, what does the air quality readings look like? Do people need to be concerned? So that is a question that is top of mind for a lot of people right now.
And this speaks to your point. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality sending out a series of tweets about this fire, one of them stating the TCEQ Houston Regional Office has dispatched emergency response personnel. They're going to conduct an initial assessment of the reported explosion at the Chemco facility in Crosby. So that's certainly some great news there. So they'll be able to get a better handle on exactly what the situation is with the air that folks at the plant and in the community surrounding the plant are breathing in right now.
Yeah, I think the hope is that they receive information sooner than what we saw with the ITC storage facility fire just a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. I think, Andy, it was several days before we had even heard any information regarding any concern regarding air quality. There was certainly concern about it, but we hadn't heard that there needed to be any shelters in place. And that obviously came days after that fire started.
Coming up 10 minutes after the hour, if you are just joining us, we are in extended coverage of a chemical plant fire. This is the Chemco chemical plant that's burning. This is up in Crosby. That's up in the northeastern part of Harris County. On the left side of your screen is a map that shows you where this facility is. It is just off Highway 90 off of Crosby-Dayton Road and Ramsey Road. We got the information into our newsroom just right around 11 o'clock, right when we went on the air here. To bring you up to speed, what we know, 1 person at the facility remains unaccounted for. 2 workers have been injured, and just a massive fight taking place right now, as you can see there on the right side of your screen, to get this fire under control. Yeah, we have seen for the past 45 minutes or so crews on the scene what appears to be spraying water on the flames. That plume of smoke still is extremely large, going almost directly into the air. Still no word on what chemical is burning. We do know that Chemco, the parent company, ORG Chemical Holdings, is the parent company, and they manufacture and process oil field products, cement grinding products, specialty chemicals, things of that nature. And we still have not heard from any officials as to
what is burning. I think that crews on scene are trying to figure that out. We do know that following this explosion, these crews, they show up, they can't immediately start with this firefight. They have to set up a perimeter and they have to try to assess what exactly is burning and then get on with trying to put this fire out. And as you mentioned, Andy, it was about 11 o'clock that we learned about this fire.
Right, and those 2 shelter-in-place orders remain in effect for both school districts, Sheldon ISD and Crosby ISD. So if you are watching us and you live in that part of the county, you've got kids in either of those school districts, just know that you stay put and that they're going to stay put as well until the danger has passed and authorities feel comfortable in lifting that order. But we're not sure how long that order is going to remain in effect. But certainly this fire, as you can tell by the smoke there on the right side of your screen, it doesn't look like they're getting any closer to getting this fire out, which has been burning since around 11 o'clock this morning. In fact, Christine, as we pointed out here over the last 20 minutes or so, we've seen some flare-ups in different parts of that plant. According to the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, it's their understanding that a warehouse is currently what's on fire and that they're trying to assess and figure out all of the different products that are burning there.
Certainly, and we do want to check now in with Channel 2 Investigates Joel Eisenbaum. He was giving us up to speed just a little bit ago about some legal issues this company has had in the past. Joel, what have you learned?
Well, there clearly is a history of violations here, totaling $38,000 in fines from TCEQ. That's just dating back to 2013. What I have noticed in the paperwork is there is a pattern of not self-reporting, and you get dinged for that as well. So if you have an event or you pollute the air or you're suspected of polluting the water, I mean, the plant managers should be privy to this, and not only that, they should alert authorities when that does happen. In a couple of these instances where they've had releases either into air or water, they have not self-reported. I specifically point to an incident in 2013 where they got sort of reports from the community that things didn't smell right in the area, and they found out later that a hatch hadn't been sealed correctly. So at that point, Kimco had a duty to inform authorities, and according to this paperwork, which is part of a 2017 lawsuit by the county against Kimco, they did not self-report. I have a couple thoughts real quickly about this fire, and that's the context of it. I mean, the place and time, because we probably have the number of environmental folks who are in town or in the area right now just because of ITC. I mean, we've got all the experts. They're already here because of what happened in Deer Park. The question I have specifically is we also have sort of right now at this very moment the most comprehensive air quality monitoring equipment available. 20+ monitors have been deployed in Deer Park. My question is, might you deploy some of those or send some of those teams or some of those monitors north of I-10, maybe check out Crosby? Because as I reported yesterday, you cannot depend in an emergency situation on these fixed air quality monitoring stations. The person who is in charge of maintenance, it's a third-party company in Pasadena. The president of that company told me plainly, look, these fixed air quality monitoring devices are for historical looks. In an emergency situation, you can't use them because the information is going to be delayed. At their best, when they're working, it's an hour and a half out. So you're not getting that information for 90 minutes. We need to come up with a plan, and Judge Hidalgo, Harris County Judge Hidalgo, says we do need some sort of emergency air quality system where we get this information quickly. And we're dealing with all the same issues at this point that we saw at the top of the ITC fire. What the heck is burning right now? We should have, you know, this is perhaps too ideal in thinking, but there should be a catalog that emergency crews have quick access to and know exactly what's in what part of this plant. And then that's the first step, I would imagine. But Kimco is not alone in having a series of fines for a variety of causes in terms of air and water pollution, but they certainly have their share. And of course, they have that fire you alluded to back in 2010. I'm still going over some of this paperwork, but it's a pretty thick stack in terms of sort of demerits and fines they've received over the years, Christine.
All right, Joel, we appreciate the commentary on that. We'll check back in with you here in a little bit. Again, to get you up to speed, we are looking at an explosion followed by a fire at the Chemco plant in Crosby. Now approaching an hour and 15 minutes or so since this began. We have learned that this is a warehouse that is on fire. We don't know what chemical is burning at this point. We have not heard from Harris County officials yet or the fire marshal. I'm assuming they're probably gathering information at this hour too. We do have Channel 2 crews in and around the area. We know that we checked in with Taisha Walker, who is not too far from the scene just a little bit ago, and we're told that they have been moved back out of an abundance of caution at this point, but we'll check in with them as soon as we can check in with them safely, Andy.
Right, and our Phil Archer, we understand, is up in that area as well, and he's moving to another location where they're expecting a news conference at some point about the situation that's taking place there. We've mentioned Crosby ISD and Sheldon ISD issuing shelter-in-place orders. Channelview ISD tweeting out just a few minutes ago that all students and staff are remaining indoors there as well. So certainly we're seeing the list in terms of school districts taking precautions, taking safety precautions. That list continues to grow at this hour. If you're just joining us there on the left side of your screen, to give you some perspective, that map shows you exactly where the Chemco chemical plant is. It's just off Highway 90 in Crosby. That's up in northeast Harris County. On the right side, you can see the firefight that's taking place from our Sky 2 as crews on the ground work to get those flames under control. From that angle, it looks like they've made some progress over the last 30 minutes or so. Certainly this thing is putting out an awful lot of smoke right now, but you know, they've been dousing quite a bit of water on some of those areas, and some of those areas, Christine, as we saw throughout the course of our coverage, have reignited over the past 30 minutes. And we do know that the TCEQ, they are sending folks out that way right now because they want to monitor the air situation to make sure that the air is safe to breathe. They've got a regional office in Houston, and they're trying to figure out what exactly is burning and whether that air is safe to breathe.
And I just want to check again in with our producer real fast about the warning for residents in that area. If you could just repeat real quick. A shelter in place for, okay, so we're learning that there is a shelter in place for all residents within a 1 mile radius of this Chemco plant in Crosby. That is information that is just into our newsroom. Again, there is a shelter in place within a 1 mile radius of this chemical plant in Crosby. That is new information.
Let's bring in meteorologist Eric Brait right now. So Eric, this is new information coming into our newsroom. We've been talking a lot this morning and this afternoon about the winds and sort of the direction that this plume of smoke is going. Now we're hearing that people within a mile radius are being asked to shelter in place. Are the conditions changing out there?
No, the conditions haven't changed at all. We've still got calm wind. I've got a map up that shows wind conditions around East Harris County. You can kind of see what's going on from that standpoint. But you can see the plume is rising vertically in the atmosphere. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of wind that kind of spreads the smoke laterally across the ground. That would be the worst case situation. You can see here, Crosby is reporting a calm wind at this hour. Baytown, Dayton, same thing. 3 mile per hour wind out of the northeast at Pasadena. So the wind conditions are pretty much optimal for this type of situation. So the smoke goes vertically into the atmosphere. It eventually does spread out, but it's several thousand feet above ground level, which is where we want to keep any kind of pollutants. Now, to Joel's point, the big question is how quickly can we actually measure what's going on in the atmosphere? At this point, it's all a big question mark, and I would assume that the shelter in place is being issued out of an abundance of caution. We just don't have any data to say, yes, the air is safe, or no, the air is not safe. I can speculate on what's going on based on what I'm seeing, based on the weather conditions that we have going on. Big ridge of high pressure, we don't have a lot of vertical mixing in the atmosphere. That's always a good thing. But until we get hard data to say, yes, it is safe around the plant, or no, it is not safe around the plant, it's all a big question mark. So the shelter in place is kind of a safety measure to make sure that people do stay safe as possible close to this plant. you know, even though they don't have the information yet. Taisha Walker was out close to the plant giving a live shot. She wasn't standing around any smoke-filled area. The air around her wasn't hazy, but she said she could smell something burning in the atmosphere. So there are fumes kind of wafting around the immediate plant area that are coming off this fire that you just can't see. You just don't know.
And I think you made an important point. You know, when you're standing back looking at the plume of smoke going almost directly into the sky, looks different than what we saw with the ITC fire, which was sort of hovering above, moving to the side,
yes.
You know, wondering, is it reaching more people? So just because it's going straight up doesn't indicate that there shouldn't be at least some cause of concern.
Yeah, it's certainly an indication that a lot of what's coming off this fire is going up in the atmosphere and staying away from people, but it's not a guarantee that it's safe around there, because there could be, you know, colorless chemicals that are coming off this fire that we don't see, that you can't see because they don't have any blackness to them like the plume of smoke does. But there could be contaminants getting around this fire that could be impacting people in the vicinity. We just don't know.
Well, the TCEQ, to your point about air quality, the TCEQ tweeting out about 20 minutes ago that the regional office in Houston has already dispatched emergency response personnel to conduct an initial assessment of the reported explosion at the facility. So hopefully we will get a better idea in terms of the air quality and the stuff that people may or may not be breathing in at this hour. We also have new information just into our newsroom from Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner. He tweeted out just a short time ago that the city of Houston and the Houston Fire Department is sending 2 foam trucks to help with suppressing the fire in Crosby. When neighboring fire departments ask for backup, he says, we go. He's, you know, urging people to continue to keep tabs on this through social media and through their news sources as the firefight continues there up in Crosby.
Yeah, we're approaching just about the hour-and-a-half mark since we at least heard about this fire. No definitive word on when exactly it happened, but we did hear from a viewer in Humble that said that she had felt her house shaking when this explosion occurred at this Chemco plant in Crosby. And what we have recently learned in the past 5-10 minutes is that there is now a shelter in place for residents living within a 1-mile perimeter radius of this plant. So that's new information. So until we hear just exactly what is burning, what air quality concerns there are, we will be sure to pass them along to you. But we are waiting to hear at this point from Harris County. We have not heard from Judge Lina Hidalgo at this point. We haven't heard from the fire marshal going about 90 minutes now into this fire and explosion at this plant.
And HFD joining the firefight that's taking place there on the ground. You are looking at that on the right side of your screen, those images courtesy of our Sky 2. We've been talking throughout the course of the morning what Chemco is, what this facility actually does. And they manufacture and they process chemicals. They're involved in specialty manufacturing of certain types of chemicals that include glycol products, oil field products, antifreeze products, and brake fluid products. It's unclear what's burning. The Harris County Fire Marshal pointed that out in a tweet, but they're working to figure that out as well. But just an example, you know, we mentioned brake fluid products. Some of the chemicals that are in brake fluid in your vehicle, glycol ether, castor oil, and silicone. We're not saying that's what's burning, but this particular facility manufactures and processes brake fluid products which contain those chemicals. So that's just kind of an example of some of the activity that may be taking place there.
And we are getting some new information right now. Galena Park ISD, out of an abundance of caution, is canceling all outdoor activities and shutting down air handlers, so their air and ventilating systems, for the remainder of the school day. That is new information that we're just getting along. Again, Galena Park ISD canceling all outdoor events today.
So all school districts, all surrounding school districts in the eastern part of the county, paying extremely close attention to what's happening at the Chemco plant up in Crosby. So Galena Park doing things out of an abundance of caution. We mentioned that Channelview ISD also keeping students and staff indoors. until they feel it is safe to release them. Crosby, Sheldon ISDs both issuing shelter-in-place orders shortly after this fire and explosion was reported, right around 11 o'clock this morning.
And what we do know is that regarding this explosion and fire, one employee is unaccounted for and 2 employees are injured. No word on the extent of their injuries. We do know that back in December 2010, there were also 3 employees hurt in a similar situation. So this is not the first time, Andy, that we're seeing an issue with this particular Chemco plant.
No, it's not. And as our investigator Joel Eisenbaum pointed out, they've had run-ins with the state before. In fact, back in 2017, 2 years ago, as recent as 2 years ago, a lawsuit was filed against the company for not following the law in terms of air and water emissions. There was an investigation that was launched by Harris County Pollution Control back in 2016. They received a complaint that there was some kind of black residue that was showing up in some water in a creek that was downstream from that plant. I want to bring in investigator Joel Eisenbaum to talk to us a little bit more about what that report says.
Yeah, sort of finishing up the story you started telling, Andy. The most incredible thing about that 2016 event, it was apparently mid-September 2016, where it was some sort of black sludge, which I don't see what the product is never identified in the paperwork that I have, but certainly it was a problem. And lots of residents apparently in the Crosby area, not lots, but a handful of residents apparently came across this stuff and just instantly knew it was nasty. It was a black sort of tar sludge that was in a creek basin. And then by the end of the investigation, this is actually a quote within the paperwork, by the end of the investigation on September 17th, the investigator had an orange-sized knot at the base of her neck and felt lightheaded. So I would think perhaps that gives you some indication of the chemicals that they're working with at that facility. And
over the course of the past 6 years, I mean, they've been slapped with some pretty heavy penalties.
Air and water. I mean, it's not like you have to go way deep back in the history. I mean, there was incidents, I mean, there's a steady stream of incidents from 2013 to 2017, the most recent that I have in the paperwork with me. And I'm pulling all of this so you know, out of an application for permanent injunction that the county filed against Chemco. They do that in association with, so the county gets together with TCEQ and they say, okay, you found all this stuff, well, let's go after them. So they kind of get it from a couple different ways when they don't think you're being a good neighbor. But the most recent event that I have right in front of me was back on January 6, 2017, so that's a little more than 2 years ago. And again, a lot of these seem to originate with complaints from community members. They either see something weird or they've smelled something. In this particular case, they had a Harris County Pollution Control, that's sort of our local environmental investigator, check out the property, which is this very property that's the subject of this fire right now. And they wanted to get to the bottom of really what this odor was. It was an unnatural odor, apparently. They later found out, as I'm reading this, that it was some sort of release of a 25-letter word that I cannot read that got out, and it smelled similar to ammonia. So the duty at that point by Chemco is they know, or we assume that they know by the controls they have in place at the plant, they know when something's escaped, when something's gotten out. That's how it's supposed to work, at least. And then from that point, you have a duty. As part of your licensure, you have a duty to report when something's been released. Time after time, when I look at this paperwork, it says Chemco did not report the emissions event to Harris County Pollution Control within 24 hours, which constitute a violation. So that's troubling in one sense, in that, okay, you've gotten something into the air or you've gotten something into the water, let us know about it. That's the important part, is you have a duty, this is how the state of Texas sees it, you have a duty to be a good neighbor and say, look, we've had an event here, we want you to know about it, because the alternative to that is some nasty stuff can get out without anybody really knowing about it. So that's the importance of environmental investigations, at least from the standpoint of TCEQ.
And Joel, a little bit ago, you were providing some context with this fire and talking about the air quality monitoring and how there are a lot of folks in town right now following up from the ITC fire in Deer Park from just a few weeks ago. And really, there's a lot of people around right now that, you know, probably are asking questions, and then this happens. Further elaborate what you were talking about regarding the context.
You know, right now, the judge, basically Harris County, has set up that harrisready.org, and it was really in response to, and I actually applaud them for doing this, because early on, you know, a lot of reporters in the room were sort of questioning the data that they really had gathered at the beginning of the ITC fire. We said, how are you so sure of what's in this or what isn't in this? And it turned out the air quality monitoring at that point, which was just a single fixed TCEQ station in Deer Park, wasn't even working. So your closest air quality monitor to that event wasn't even in service at that point. So I think, you know, trying to do our job, we sort of jumped on administrators and said, how are you going to fix that? To their credit, they set up a big website where they now have a big interactive map with 20+ mobile air quality monitors that are all in and around Deer Park and sort of that southeast side. My question is, do you need to redeploy those or move those, you know, up the road, I guess, northbound to Crosby to see what's in this stuff?
And when they deploy those air monitoring quality devices, I mean, are those readings coming in real time, or is there some kind of a delay there?
That is an excellent question. I don't think there is anything on the order of the 90-minute delay that you get best case scenario with the fixed devices. There's always some degree of delay, but it's supposed to be real-time monitoring, as I understand it. I don't know the exact delay. There's always going to be some degree of it, but certainly you can't rely on, we found out, on these network of fixed devices.
Joel, stand by because we have some questions for you here to follow up, but we do want to let you know right now some sad news to report. We are learning that one person has died, 2 have injured in this explosion and fire. That's just into our newsroom. 1 employee, we're learning, has died, 2 employees injured. No extent of the injuries at this time. Yeah,
and certainly our thoughts and prayers are with that person's family as we wait to learn what exactly is burning at this chemical plant. We know that the Harris County Fire Marshal is on the scene as well. The TCEQ sending out investigators to assess the situation there as well to figure out what exactly is burning. There are several different types of chemicals that are processed and manufactured at this facility. One of the things that we've touched on are glycol products. You're asking, okay, what are glycol products? Well, an example would be ethylene glycol. That's a chemical that's used in a lot of different commercial and industrial applications, including, you know, the antifreeze and coolant in your car. It's also used as an industrial coolant for gas compressors, heating, ventilating, air conditioning systems, ice skating rinks. Again, we can't tell you that is what's burning. We just know these are the types of chemicals that are manufactured and processed at this facility.
We do have crews on the scene right now. We do want to check in with reporter Phil Archer standing by with some new details. Hi, Phil.
Hi. And yeah, we're standing by about as close as we can get to the fire. This is Running Bird and Highway 90, and you can see a big contingent of Sheriff's Department out here turning people around. And now, where everybody's trying to go is right down this road here, if we can look at that, James. We're about 2 miles from the scene of this fire, and what we've seen mostly are people coming out. I see now they're allowing some people to go in. We talked to a lady just about 10 minutes ago who lives a couple of blocks from that plant, and she said what she heard was a very loud boom this morning around 11 a.m., and then she felt her trailer move. At that point, she decided it was time to leave, and she and her neighbors were getting out. She told us, as a matter of fact, that they are evacuating her neighborhood, which again is about 2 blocks away from the plant. And she said on the way out, she inhaled something that was mildly irritating, but didn't have any kind of serious effect with her. But she's concerned about it, of course. I think you just mentioned we've gotten confirmation now that we have 1 dead from the explosion and fire that's still underway there. 2 were injured, and we're still trying to find out exactly what's burning. That's a big question everybody's interested in. We are at a Valero station at this intersection I just told you about. We were sent here at the direction of the Sheriff's Department, and we are expecting shortly for the county fire marshal and the county sheriff to come down here and give us some more details about this. Let us know exactly, if they know, what's burning and what they are doing about it. So we'll be coming back to you shortly. Till then, I'm live in Crosby. Phil Archer.
Phil, appreciate it. Thanks so much. One of the things that we're going to be figuring out here shortly, hopefully, is what's burning. So many different chemicals are processed and manufactured at this facility. Want to mention Crosby ISD updating the situation on what's being done for students and faculty to keep them safe. Their campuses continue to have that shelter in place in order, and the HVAC systems out of all of the campuses have been shut down. Teachers have sealed doors where, just as an additional safety precaution, students again are not being released to parents. The school district wants parents to know, if you're watching us, you have a child that attends schools in Crosby or ISD, that they are in close communication with first responders. They're awaiting further instructions. But at this time, the campuses, things are relatively calm on all campuses, and as soon as they have information, they will be sure to pass it along. Also, we've reported just a short time ago that Galena Park ISD, out of an abundance of caution, canceled all outdoor activities as well, and that a shelter in place has been issued for anyone living within a mile radius of the Chemco plant, out of an abundance of caution, as we wait and we work to figure out what type of chemical is burning at this plant. The fire and explosion reported just around 11 o'clock this morning. So here we are nearly 2 hours later. And Christine, we're still seeing a lot of that thick black choking smoke that we saw once we began our extended coverage of this fire.
It doesn't appear that from our vantage point that we can see that this plume has really changed at all. It looks like that they were making some headway, but that thick black smoke is still very abundant there, very clear. We do know that there are crews in the scene spraying water and a foam material on that to hopefully try to get those flames out. We did see what appeared to be earlier little flare-ups at different tanks nearby, but those, as far as we can see, have not grown into anything concerning at that point.
And again, one of the things that really is going to grab people here, especially in the wake of the ITC tank farm fire, when they look up and see this huge plume of smoke, first thing is, oh my goodness, here we go again, something's on fire. The smoke continues to fill the sky. What are we breathing in? Want to bring in investigator Joel Eisenbaum to talk more about these air quality monitors that are set up, that were set up as a result of the ITC fire.
Right, which are currently being deployed on the east side, southeast side, Deer Park area. It's 20 plus mobile monitors, as I understand it. It's sort of the EPA, TCEQ, and the county working together to sort of get that so-called real-time information out to the public. But right now, we're seeing what the problem is. I just, with Eric Brate, looked at the closest air quality monitor, and keep in mind that this network of 40 plus monitors that you keep hearing about, not each and every one of those monitors is capable of taking a reading of VOCs, of the nasty stuff, the stuff like benzene. The closest one that I see in terms of fixed air quality monitors is in channel view, and Eric and I just looked at that, and at 10 a.m. and 11 a.m., there's no numbers there. So if you're somebody who wants to figure out, hey, what's in the air, I want to go to my air quality monitor that's closest to me, and you go to this website right now, you're going to see a bunch of blanks for 10 a.m. and 11 a.m.
So 10 a.m. and here we are at 12:40 in the afternoon, roughly an hour and 40 minutes after this fire was first reported.
No useful information. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. This network of air quality monitors, if there's a disaster, a catastrophe, a problem, a fire, and you want to check out what's in the air, you cannot go to this network of monitors, look online and see what's going on, because the information is often missing, and at the very least, it's delayed by at least 90 minutes. Case in point is the channel view monitor right now has not reported since, I believe it's 9 a.m., right, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, the last reading we saw was at 9 a.m. That's before the fire even started.
And you talk about the data, the information is either missing or delayed. Delays are really significant when you look at your screen there and you see all this smoke. I mean, in a matter of minutes,
yeah,
the air quality can change just on a drop of a dime like that.
I mean, if I'm living on top of something like this, or I'm living nearby, and this stuff is, you know, you're supposed to be in your house, of course, if you're within a 1 mile radius at this point. But if you see this stuff and you're with your kids, or your kids are at school, I mean, that is really unnerving. The first thing I think that administrators, county officials, the company, you need to get out there and say, hey, this is what we've got. This is what happened. These are the chemicals we believe are involved. Here's the plan in terms of monitoring the air. This was the same issue that we saw, and I'm not pointing fingers, but during the ITC fire, it started on a Sunday. We did not hear from anybody until 24 hours later. That's when they had the first press conference. I'm wondering how long it'll take this time for our leaders to step forward and give us the rundown of exactly what's going on.
Well, and at the very least, we know that the public deserves that. They're looking at this going, okay, what is going on? We are coming off of a massive fire in Deer Park going, okay, there was a huge plume of smoke. There were several flare-ups. Then we dealt with the benzene issues and the air quality concerns. That was just a few weeks ago. And now we're looking at this chemical fire following an explosion, seeing a very similar black plume of smoke, and people wondering, what is it that we're breathing and what is it that we're dealing with here?
Yeah, I know we've sat here and kind of rattled off some of the different chemicals that are processed and manufactured. Some are pretty easy to kind of wrap your mind and your arms around. Others, you know, there are names that are difficult to pronounce, but, you know, the short story is, you know, the bottom line is when you see the air, when you look at this, when you see the smoke in the air, you want to know, what am I breathing in? I mean, it's fine and dandy that they make all these and process all these different types of chemicals, but in terms of, hey, how is this going to impact me from this point forward? That's what it boils down to, is they see that black plume of smoke floating up into the air, and they want to know, okay, what's in there? How is it going to affect my health? And
I think that's what we're seeing now with the shelter in place for residents within that 1 mile perimeter of this chemical fire, because we're still awaiting information and perhaps they don't know. So out of an abundance of caution, residents within a mile are asked to shelter in place and, you know, close those cracks and, you know, that under your doors or whatever could come into the house at this point. But we're seeing that announcement made out of an abundance of caution until we do find out, in fact, what it is that is burning and if there is strong air quality concerns. And as Joel was mentioning, those fixed air quality monitors, you might not have a reading for 90 minutes. This is happening in real time right now, this fire, and conditions are ever changing, as we have learned following the Deer Park fire, and now this one. Conditions are constantly changing, and the monitors don't reflect that regarding the air quality. So that is a big wild card right now, a big question mark, and we have yet to hear from Harris County leaders or the fire marshal regarding what exactly we are dealing with. We've also not heard from the company.
No, we haven't heard anything from the company, and here we are almost 2 hours after this fire was first reported. We do know that Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez is set to hold a news conference here in the next few minutes, so we, of course, will be bringing that to you live. But yeah, still a lot of unanswered questions. Here we are at 1:45 on a Tuesday afternoon here in Houston as we try and get a hold of the situation that's taking place here at the chemical plant up in Crosby. We've been in extended coverage since about 11:20 this morning. Shelter-in-place orders have been issued for 2 school districts, including Crosby ISD and Sheldon ISD. Channelview ISD also keeping students and staff indoors as well. Galena ISD canceling all outdoor activities after school out of an abundance of caution. So there are a lot of unanswered questions. We know that the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, they're on scene there as well. It is their understanding that a warehouse is on fire. The TCEQ, out of its Houston regional office, they're sending investigators up to Chemco to assess the situation to find out what's burning. So there are a lot of different pieces of this puzzle in play right now as this story continues to develop and unfold. And
we do know that 1 employee has been confirmed dead, 2 are injured. We don't know the extent of their injuries, so 3 in total as a result of this explosion and fire. We do want to check in now with Channel 2's Taisha Walker, who is in a nearby neighborhood in a safe area with more information. Hi, Taisha.
Hi, Christine. We're about 5 minutes away. We're actually near a gas station. We were trying to talk to some people here at a laundromat about their concerns. But we were at the scene a short time ago, just down the road, I would say within a mile radius of that chemical plant. We have now learned that Sheriff Ed Gonzalez has asked that people who live within that distance of that plant to shelter in place. But as we were leaving, because we were being told that it wasn't safe for us to be there ourselves, as we were leaving, we did spot a family that was walking, some of them with masks on their face, some young children with them too. I did speak with one of those parents, a mother of 3, who tells me that she was concerned for the safety of her children, so she decided to walk and try to get to safety. Unfortunately, 2 of her students are, 2 of her children are in school right now under that shelter in place. I did speak with her, and she told me that she heard a loud boom early this morning and decided, in light of what happened in Deer Park, that it was safe for her and her family to walk, since we still don't know what sort of chemicals are burning in the air. I did speak with another neighbor who lived along that same street, Ramsey Road, and he told me that around 11 o'clock today, his house shook, and when he came outside, he noticed that big mushroom cloud. He is also planning to evacuate as well. So a lot of people that at least live within that close proximity to that plant, if they're not sheltering in place, they are planning to leave the neighborhood to get to a safer area until they can figure out what exactly is going on. I did speak with some other people here. As I mentioned, we're by a laundromat, and one gentleman told me he doesn't live nearby it and he's not concerned, although the wind can blow and at any point and change the direction that that chemical is flowing. But again, that's just a little bit of what people are saying and how they are feeling here. We'll continue to monitor that and bring you updates as soon as we can. But for now, reporting live in Crosby, Taisha Walker, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
Taisha, thank you. And do want to reference now a tweet from Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo saying, please avoid the area in Crosby where a shelter in place has been issued. We are working, my phone just went out, but yeah, we are hearing from Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo saying that, you know, people, they are working to get more information, and we will be hearing from them here in just a little bit. And we, of course, are working to get more information from Chemco at this hour. Here we are nearly 2 hours after the initial report of that fire came into our newsroom. Still no clear indication as to what's burning there at the Chemco plant in Crosby. We know that a lot of different chemical products are manufactured and processed there, but we can't definitively tell you which one of those is burning, which is the source of the fuel for this fire. Yeah, looking at glycol, antifreeze products, oil field products, cement grinding products, as well as other specialty chemicals. Again, as you mentioned, no word on exactly what is burning. We just know that those types of chemicals and products are being processed and manufactured at Chemco. Right, and you mentioned one of them, brake fluid products are being processed there. So what's in your brake fluid? Well, things like castor oil, silicone, glycol ether, glycol products on the list of chemicals that are processed and manufactured there. Okay, what are glycol products? We're talking about ethylene glycol. That's one of them. Things that are part of
industrial coolants, things that are in your, gas compressors, your heating, your ventilating, your AC system. So that just gives you an indication of the types of chemicals that are processed at that facility. We're not here on the air saying that is definitively what's burning, but these are the types of chemicals that are processed and manufactured at that particular plant.
Yeah, and we are awaiting a press conference to learn more information about this, but we do know that there is a shelter in place being issued for residents living within a mile radius of this chemical plant in Crosby. So we found that out about a half hour ago. So if you are one of those residents, just shelter in place right now, and we will bring you information just as soon as we learn them. Again, getting viewer video right there of that large plume of smoke. And as we learned from meteorologist Eric Brate, the wind speeds are really low, around 5 miles an hour. So we're seeing that plume of smoke go almost directly into the air. It's the scene that we've been seeing for over an hour now, and no word yet on the concerns surrounding air quality. As Channel 2 investigator Joel Isobutylene had said, those fixed air quality monitors only read like every 90 minutes. And as we're looking at this plume of smoke, we know that this has been burning now for over an hour and a half, going on almost 2 hours now, and it's an ever-changing situation. So no word yet on what chemical exactly is burning, what kind of fumes are being put out as a result of that. But Eric, standing by now, any changes in our situation here?
No, the wind conditions haven't changed at all. We've got calm conditions. So as far as the weather is concerned, it's optimal for dealing with a situation like this. You've got the plume of smoke going straight up into the atmosphere, getting the brunt of the smoke. You can see right here, that smoke is staying well above ground level. We've got high pressure in control, so there's not a lot of vertical mixing in the atmosphere, so that smoke that is high up is hopefully going to stay well above ground level. And we're going to have relatively clean air near the surface. Now, the thing is, what other kinds of fumes that are not smoke related, that are colorless, for instance, are still sitting near the ground? We had a reporter out there a little bit earlier that said she could smell something burning in the atmosphere. She wasn't standing in a plume of smoke or anything, but she could still smell chemicals in the atmosphere, which is why they've got the shelter in place for the area 1 mile away from the plant. And it's a giant question mark. It's not until we can actually measure what is in the air that we will know. So we have to act, or authorities have to act out of an abundance of caution at this point, because we just don't know anything. I was just looking at the computer with Joel at monitoring locations that you can find online through TCEQ, and the closest one with any kind of information that might be applicable to a situation like this is in Channelview, which is probably 10 to 15 miles away from this location. So there's really no way that anybody in the public can go online and find out what's going on in their neighborhood as far as the air quality is concerned.
And the last reading from Channelview at 10, the last two readings, excuse me, at 10 and 11 a.m.
Yeah, we've got a printout. All morning long they've been issuing readings, and some, chemicals have been high at times, they've been low at times, but at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock there's no information. It's not available. The latest information we have is from 9 o'clock this morning, and that doesn't do anything to help us.
Yes, and to reference this, I want to go back to Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo's tweet, where she talks about for a moment the air quality concerns. In her tweet, she said, "Please avoid the area in Crosby where a shelter in place has been issued. We are working with our emergency response partners to assess air quality and other potential safety concerns." So we are hoping to hear from officials here in the next 5 minutes at a press conference, and hopefully getting some more information regarding this, you guys.
And one would hope that those emergency partners include the TCEQ. That agency, again, already in the process of sending investigators out from the Houston regional office to that scene up there in Crosby at Kimco to assess the situation. Among the other agencies there on the scene as well, the Harris County Fire Marshal, they tweeted out about 30-40 minutes ago that they were under the impression that it was a warehouse that was burning, and that they were unclear what type of product or chemical was on fire and was burning. The video, we just do want to reference to point out on the right side of your screen, these are not live pictures. This is video from Sky 2 throughout the course of our extended coverage. Again, you can just see the size and the shape of that black plume of smoke has changed throughout the course of the morning into the afternoon, Christine.
And again, you can see on the left side of the screen, it looks like there was sort of a flare-up that had started. We haven't seen those flare-ups get any bigger, which has been the good news in that regard, because we know how quickly that can happen. We saw that with the ITC storage facility fire just a few weeks ago. So that is the concern. We're seeing this large plume of smoke. We're continuing to follow developments. But again, this is not the first time this Chemco facility has had issues. So we know in this case, one employee has been confirmed dead, 2 are injured, no word on the extent of their injuries. But back in December 2010, Chemco also had an explosion and fire, and 3 employees were hurt in that one. So there has been issues with this company in the past.
And tragically and sadly today, we do know that 1 person was killed in this fire, 2 others injured after the explosion there at Chemco. We've been talking a lot about the different chemicals and products that are processed and manufactured there. One of the things I want to go back to, Christine, is in talking about the glycol products. Sure. There are different types of glycol products. One that I talked about earlier was ethylene glycol. One is propylene glycol. Again, those types of things are found in antifreeze and polyurethane cushions. You know, lots of different types of products that you'll find these chemicals in. We're not saying, again, I want to be crystal clear here, we're not saying that's what's burning. We're not saying that's what you're seeing in the smoke there, but these are some of the different types of chemicals that are processed at this particular facility. We know that because that's what's posted on the company's website.
And we do know, just from recent experience with the ITC fire, that if we're comparing the plumes of smoke and the type of fire, they look very similar. So we have to assume, at least in this case, that there is some sort of chemical burning. So that leads to the air quality concern issue, which has not really yet been addressed. We know that with the fixed air quality monitoring systems, those read every 90 minutes or so, which is not really all that helpful right now during a fluid situation that's ever changing like this fire. So we're hoping to get an update in the next few minutes from officials on air quality concerns that people have, because no doubt if you're looking out your window or you're turning on channel 2 and you're looking at this video and looking at these live pictures from earlier, that's a big concern. What are we breathing in? What fumes are being emitted from these flames? You make a great point. It is so unsettling for folks, especially in that part of the county. And given the size of this fire, I mean, that smoke has been seen in many different areas across Harris County. We talked to one resident, Wendy Royal, in Humble. Humble, yeah. I don't know the exact distance between Humble and Crosby, but she was able to see the smoke, or she was able to feel the explosion, excuse me, from her home there. So yeah, it's unsettling to see this in terms of what's happening. And parents, if you're watching us right now and you've got kids that attend Channelview ISD, your kids in Crosby ISD or Sheldon ISD, just know that these school districts are taking safety precautions right now, and they have since the very beginning, since this fire first broke out. Sheldon ISD, Crosby ISD both have shelter-in-place orders that are still in effect. Galena Park has canceled all of their outdoor activities for the rest of the day in the meantime as well. And Crosby ISD tweeting out just a short time ago that all campuses remain in a shelter in place. The HVAC systems have been shut down in all of the buildings within the school district, and they promise, they're adamant about this, they will not release students to parents or by bus until it is safe to do so. In terms of the situation that's taking place on the ground there, we do know that HFD is stepping in to help, that they've sent a foam truck up there to assist with the firefight that's been taking place on the ground there for the better part of 2 hours now, Christine. As we wait to hear from Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, he is set to host a news conference here in just a few minutes to bring us up to speed on what they know about the fire and explosion that took place there at Chemco. The information came into our newsroom right around 11 o'clock this morning. As a result of the fire and explosion, we know that one person tragically lost their life. 2 others have been injured. We just showed some video
of life flight helicopter. That was on the right side of your screen. So the injured are being tended to. Unclear how much progress the firefighters have made on the ground, but we do know that they are working to put out those flames, which again have been burning for the better part of 2 hours. We saw some areas that reignited through the course of our extended breaking news coverage here on Channel 2 throughout the course of the morning and the afternoon. The Harris County Fire Marshal's office is on the scene as well. It is their understanding that a warehouse is on fire. They're on the scene trying to assess what's burning. The TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, they tweeted out about 45 minutes ago that they were sending investigators from the Houston Regional Office to assess the situation there as well. Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, as Christine pointed out just a few minutes ago, she tweeted out that she's urging folks to stay away from the plant and to keep tabs on how that situation continues to unfold.
And we're getting new information. I want to talk to Stacy in the booth real fast. You were giving information regarding the firefight. What was that? And that's what's being poured on the fire. Isobutylene? Isobutylene. Okay. And again, we're following this. We're now going on 2 hours since this fire has started. It started with an explosion, and we have heard from a few different residents nearby. They felt, Andy, they felt that shake when that explosion happened, followed by this fire. And we do know, we were talking with Channel 2 investigator Mario Lopez about an hour ago, and he said he recently went on a training as to what these first responders deal with in fighting a fire like this. And they show up and they have to set a perimeter. And then they have to examine what it is that they're working with before they can even take the first step in starting to fight this fire. And we do know that they are using foam and they're using water to put out these flames. And we really haven't seen much of a change in the appearance of this plume of smoke. It's not getting any bigger. It's not getting any smaller. Going on 2 hours now. We're awaiting a press conference from officials to provide any information on what it is that we are looking at. At this point, it's just speculation as to what exactly is burning in there. Andy, I know we were going over what this chemical plant manufactures and what it produces and the different type of chemicals that we could be seeing, but all we know at this point is that it is a warehouse that is on fire in Crosby. And
it's our understanding that isobutylene initially started the fire and is what's burning right now. Again, Christine, as you mentioned, first responders there on the ground trying to contain this fire. They have help from the Houston Fire Department, which has sent a foam truck to assist in the firefight that's taking place there on the ground. First responder safety is of the utmost importance right now. I mean, they're right there. They're on the front lines of this thing. We can't thank them enough for what they're doing there, but certainly there are things that they have to do to make sure that they are safe and in a position where they can safely fight this fire and get those flames out. Okay, so isobutylene, that is what started the fire. I'm understanding that now. Okay, so then we are waiting to hear from officials on what exactly that means for folks. And we do know, again, that there is with residents within 1 mile of this chemical fire in Crosby should remain in a shelter is in place for them until we have an update for them. That should be what they do right now. And yeah, we're going on now 2 hours since this began. And just to tell you a little bit about what we know about isobutylene, it's a colorless gas with a faint petroleum-like odor. For transportation, it may be stenched. It is shipped as liquefied gas under its own vapor pressure. Contact with the liquid can cause frostbite. It is easily ignited. Its vapors are heavier than air, and a flame can flash back to the source of the leak very easily. The leak can either be a liquid or vapor leak. It can asphyxiate by the displacement of air. Under prolonged exposure to fire or heat, the containers may rupture or violently rocket. It is used in the production of high-octane gasoline. That's what we know about isobutylene. So that is initially what we know to be the source of this fire. at the Chemco chemical plant up in Crosby in the northeast part of the county. Just to be clear, for those of you who are just joining us, the video that you're looking at there on the right side of your screen, that is video from earlier, video that we've taken from our Sky 2, which was over that scene for the better part of 90 minutes as the firefight on the ground continues to take place. The TCEQ sent investigators. This was about 45 minutes ago. They tweeted out that they were sending investigators from the Houston regional office to the scene there in Crosby to assess the situation. The Harris County Fire Marshal's office also on scene. HFD has also joined in on the firefight. Just to give you some perspective, you'll see that map there on the left side of your screen. That's the location of the Chemco plant. It's just off Highway 90 in the Crosby area up in the northeastern part of the county.
And do want to pass some new information along. If you're a parent of a Sheldon ISD student, we are learning that Sheldon ISD has just lifted their shelter in place. We do know that it had been put into place out of an abundance of caution, but Sheldon ISD, that shelter in place has been lifted. So Sheldon ISD is allowed to pick up their kids, as we know that the end of the school day is approaching in the next few hours. But the school district says that it is going to continue monitoring the situation, but Sheldon ISD has lifted their shelter in place. To update you, Crosby ISD shelter in place is still in place. So is Galena Park. All of their outdoor activities have been canceled for the rest of the day, as well as Channelview. But the only one that has been lifted is Sheldon ISD at this point.
I want to pass on some more information about isobutylene. In terms of the potential health hazards here, it can cause issues with concentration, it can cause dizziness, drowsiness, and in some cases it can even cause unconsciousness. Contact with the eyes or the skin may cause irritation, and if you touch the liquid, it can actually cause frostbite. We don't have any indication right now that the air in that part of the county is unhealthy for you to breathe. We have not heard from the TCEQ in terms of what the air quality is. We have not heard from Chemco in terms of what they know about the air quality. But these are questions that we are working right now to get answered for you. But of course, as we've been telling you, you see this black plume of smoke in the sky. Certainly very unsettling to see that, especially in the wake of the ITC tank farm fire in Deer Park. First thing you ask yourself is, okay, what am I breathing in? So we know a different number of chemicals are processed and manufactured there, including brake fluid, antifreeze, oil-filled products, glycol products. But officials telling us that isobutylene is what's burning there.
And we're looking at video right now on the right side of the screen, so you can see the firefight continues with crews on the ground pouring water rather, and a foam substance trying to fight those flames. Again, we're very reminiscent of the ITC storage facility fire with that large black plume of smoke. And we spoke with meteorologist Eric Brate not too long ago, talking about the way that the wind plays a factor in this. And right now, wind speeds are about 5 miles an hour, very low. We're looking at that plume going straight into the air. And we're still awaiting to hear if air quality concerns really exist at this point. We do know that that shelter in place was put in for residents within a mile radius of Crosby and that chemical fire. But Eric's standing by now talking a little more about this, and we know the conditions really aren't changing. Overall, the weather outside is a fairly nice day, and the fact that the wind really sort of plays a factor in this plume of smoke.
Yeah, it's kind of the optimal situation in a situation like this. The smoke is rising up. We did hear from the National Weather Service, Houston Galveston office, and kind of as I've been mentioning so far this morning into the afternoon, the smoke is rising vertically, as you can see here, and then it's kind of spreading out laterally. It's kind of fanning out as it gets between about 2,500 and 4,500 feet in the atmosphere. That's the estimation that the National Weather Service has been indicating to us as far as where the smoke plume is going. And at this point, with the big ridge of high pressure overhead here in southeast Texas, there's not a lot of vertical mixing in the atmosphere. So the hope is that this smoke rises quickly just due to the heat of the fire itself. The hot gas coming off the fire is much less dense than the surrounding air. So it basically rises up just like a hot air balloon into the upper levels of the atmosphere, again about 2,500 to 4,500 feet up. And then it begins to kind of spread out laterally. It gets kind of caught up in the the upper level winds, which are a little bit stronger than the winds at the surface. And ideally, what you would want them to do is these upper level winds just kind of take that smoke away, disperse it, make it much less concentrated, and spread it out over a large area well above ground. That's the optimum situation that you would hope for. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now, the smoke plume staying above ground on some of the wide shots that we've been seeing. The big question is what kind of fumes are coming off this fire that are not getting caught up in this smoke plume, that are kind of spreading along the ground, that may be colorless. You can't see them. And that's the big question. Until we have definitive numbers from air monitoring equipment, we have to, use an abundance of caution, and that's why we have the shelter in place that has been issued. And people need to heed that. You have to assume that things are the worst until you hear otherwise.
And I know one of the things that we've been going over here throughout the morning and into the afternoon is these mobile air quality monitors that are set up. The data isn't necessarily in real time.
No.
And that's a problem when you're talking about a chemical plant fire.
Yeah, I don't know how long it takes for them to take a sample of the air, run the test, get the determination of what is in the air that they have sampled, and then get that information out to the public. I don't know what that turnaround time is because I'm not an expert on sampling air and measuring air quality. But we don't have any stationary devices that are even close to this that can give us any kind of a reading. So we have to wait for these mobile units to come into place, and we have to wait for this testing to be done, for the results to be generated, and for that information to be disseminated.
Well, authorities have indicated that isobutylene initially started this fire, and that's what's burning right now. It's a colorless gas. It has a faint petroleum-like odor, and in terms of some of the different health hazards, if you come in contact with it, if you're breathing this stuff in, it can make you feel a little dizzy, and in worst case scenarios, it can make you unconscious. There are some issues, if it comes in contact with your face or your eyes, your face and your skin, your eyes may start to burn a little bit. So I know we talked to Taisha Walker just a short time ago, and she had mentioned that she spoke to someone at a laundromat and that they were already putting on
a face mask out of an abundance of caution.
Right.
Certainly, well, following the ITC Deer Park fire, I think that when we saw the increased benzene levels days after that fire, that it really caused concern because of the issue with the air quality monitoring systems and the readings that were hours delayed, and we found out that at that point there was a reader that wasn't even working. It was broken. And so when we're depending on these air quality monitors for information regarding public safety, that can be concerning. And we're waiting to hear from officials to hear, if there is, any further shelters in places and what they're looking at regarding air quality concerns. And we are expected to hear from them. We just learned that the press conference has been moved back to 1:30. We are approaching 1:13 now. This fire has been going on for more than 2 hours, and we're awaiting an update.
And just to pass along some new information, semi-new information that's come into our newsroom in terms of what the school districts are doing to keep children and staff and faculty safe. Sheldon ISD now allowing parents to pick up their children from school early, should they wish to do so. They are planning to dismiss students at normal times. Crosby ISD also had an update as well on the situation. Their campuses again continue to shelter in place. All HVAC systems have been taken out of commission. They've been shut down. Teachers even sealing doors where possible, just as an additional safety precaution. The district wants to let parents know that they're not releasing students to them until it's safe to do so, and that they remain in close communication with those first responders as they await further instruction.
And if you're just tuning in, if you're looking at this, the video right here, this is video from earlier. We're not getting a live picture right now. We do know that Sky 2 is refueling back up to get us another live picture, but we're getting a look at the video right now, and that is what it looked like shortly after 11 o'clock with this large plume of smoke. You can see if you look right in the middle of that picture, the fire right there. And we do know that crews have been on the scene spraying water and foam material in efforts to put that fire out.
And we know this isn't the first incident to take place at the Chemco chemical plant. There was an issue back in December of 2010, an explosion that left 3 workers there injured. We also know that they've been under investigation before, the subject of a lawsuit, as a matter of fact. According to investigator Joel Eisenbaum, who we had here in studio with us a short time ago, he had mentioned a lawsuit from 2017 that was filed against the company for not following the law in terms of air and water emissions. An investigation was sparked the year before in 2016. In fact, Harris County Pollution Control received a complaint from someone about reports of a black residue that was showing up in a creek that was downstream from that plant. And by the end of that investigation, and we're quoting or paraphrasing here, the investigator who was on that scene developed some kind of an orange knot on her neck and wasn't feeling well. That's all contained in that report.
Yeah. In that report, certainly. Yeah, and again, Chemco is the company. ORG Chemical Holdings is its parent company, and it processes and manufactures brake fluid, oil field products, glycol, antifreeze products, cement grinding products. It wasn't until recently that we knew that it was isobutylene that is what caused that fire to start. For folks, though, Andy, that are looking at this video, seeing the large plume of smoke, it really wouldn't matter to them what chemical it was, going, okay, this is something that we don't want to breathe in. We don't know exactly what we're dealing with, but as far as that shelter in place for within a 1 mile radius, that continues to be in place for folks in and around Crosby within a 1 mile radius.
Yeah, for them, it's all about, hey, how does this impact me right now?
Sure.
And we are working to get you those answers in terms of the air quality and whether the air is safe and whether the air is dangerous. We don't have any indication right now that the air is unhealthy to breathe, but we don't have updated air quality readings from that area either. So certainly, again, Christine, as you've mentioned, that all of these school districts have taken measures out of an abundance of caution to make sure that students and faculty are safe. We do know that a shelter in place has been issued, though, remains in effect for anyone who is within a 1 mile radius of the Chemco plant in Crosby. Some of the things just to be aware of when we're talking about isobutylene, I mean, it's a colorless gas. It can have a faint petroleum-like odor. In terms of the health hazards, you know, if you're breathing this stuff in, it could cause dizziness, it could cause drowsiness. In some cases, it can cause unconsciousness. If it touches your eyes, comes in contact with your skin, it may cause irritation. In its liquid form, it can cause frostbite. Now, we know that there's a massive firefight that's taking place there on the ground. On the right side of your screen, you're looking at video that was shot earlier from our Sky 2, which has since left the scene to refuel, but a massive firefight taking place there on the scene for the better part of two and a half hours now, coming up on 2.5 hours now. We know that HFD has joined in on that firefight as well, assisting the efforts there with a foam truck to make sure that they're able to get the flames under control at that chemical plant. Sadly, one person has lost their life. We know that 2 others were injured. We don't know the extent of those injuries, but we are waiting on an update from officials, which is set to take place right around 1:30 is what we're being told.
And in just a few minutes here, you know, we are planning on hearing from officials around 1:30, and we're also going to be having a phone conversation here with a University of Houston chemical engineering professor to answer some questions that we have regarding isobutylene and a chemical fire of this magnitude. We will have that here in just a moment. Actually, we do want to get to him right now. Again, University of Houston professor of chemical engineering on the phone, Ramanan Krishnamurti. Thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, happy to be here.
Thank you. So we're learning that this is, first off, just what can you offer regarding a perspective with this chemical fire?
Well, this is a toll processor, so they have had lots of different chemicals come through and go through this place. Isobutylene by itself is a gas at room temperature. It tends to be highly explosive in the presence of certain other chemicals such as peroxides, and so not knowing exactly what was the root cause of the explosion, The fact that it's isobutylene, it does the flammable products do end up giving you irritation in your airways. It causes skin irritation, but largely it doesn't have some of the challenges with, say, highly toxic carbon.
Ramadan, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, great. We appreciate that. Okay, so
in terms of these health hazards that you're talking about, sir, I mean, how long does it take for the gas, for whatever's burning, the isobutylene, to dissipate in the air? I mean, how quickly does it dissipate?
Well, it's got a fairly high vapor pressure, so it's a gas at room temperature. So at elevated temperatures where it is burning, it should dissipate very quickly into the atmosphere. But it also depends on how much material they had in the equipment that they were using. So it really the fire, the extent to which this will go on, depends on the volume of material they had at site.
And we don't have any, we don't have an exact number, if you would, measurement in terms of how much of that stuff was burning. But I can tell you this, I mean, for the better part of 90 minutes or so, I mean, the plume of black smoke was huge, going straight up into the air, and really didn't show any signs of slowing down. So what kind of an impact does that have on someone's health if that stuff continues to burn?
Well, if it continues to burn, they've got you would be worried about people breathing too much of this, because again, it can cause irritation. Does it have long-term impacts? Probably not. Does it cause long-term exposure hazards? Probably not. But short-term, it causes a lot of irritation. And for people who have compromised breathing or asthma conditions like that, you're going to have to to shelter in place or find ways to get out of the location if you can.
And sir, I know you're not a firefighter, but in terms of looking at this from the first responder perspective, are there things that our first responders who were there on the scene need to do to protect themselves in order to fight this particular type of fire, since we know that it's isobutylene that's burning?
So let's sort of be sure about this, right? Isobutylene started the fire. We don't know what other chemicals are present at that site, and until we know what else is there, you have to really tread very, very carefully. Isobutylene itself is highly flammable. It is a significant fire hazard, but it's if it is in an uncontained vessel, then it's not likely to be an explosive issue at this point. But what other chemicals are present needs to be something that we need to look out for, especially because this is a toll processor. And for people who don't know what a toll processor is, these are companies that bring in chemicals from large chemical producers, perform certain chemical processes such as distillation or a reaction, and then supply this chemical back to many of the large chemical manufacturers. And so they have a lot of different things coming and going on a continuous basis. And for that reason, you really need to know what the inventory of material at the site is at the current time.
And Ramadan, to address your question regarding other products and chemicals at this plant, now we don't know, we know this is a warehouse, we know that isobutylene started the fire. We do know that this plant processes and manufactures glycol, antifreeze products, oiled field products, cement grinding products, and other specialty chemicals.
Correct.
Correct, okay. So, yeah,
yes, and they, as I mentioned, they're a toll processor, so they are going to be processing all different types of materials as they come and go. They might have some xylenes, they might have some benzene chloride, they might have different things at different times. And so knowing the specifics of what was at the site is really, really important.
Right, and we're working to get that information right now, but given the different chemicals, the list of chemicals that Christine just ran through, the different chemicals and products. Let's say if that's the type of fire that they're fighting right now, I mean, how difficult is it using foam and water to get those types of fires under control?
Well, that's your best bet to do it, is go with as much foam as possible to take the chemicals out of contact from air. And if you can get that successfully done, you can get this fire under control. You really don't want it to spread beyond where it started and in the equipment where it is currently located.
Right, but we have seen throughout the course of our coverage, we're not showing it right now, but we saw there were spots where we saw different areas ignite, areas that were already on fire. We saw spots where they reignited. What does that tell you about the situation, based on your
Well, that means that we don't have the fire under control. You know, I'm watching as we speak. I'm watching some of the coverage, and from before, they're really going in with as much foam as they can. Foam and water are the best ways to go after this fire, and you know, and if you can keep it localized, I think that's your best bet. And you know, having you know, we're very fortunate today that we don't have very strong winds, because this if you have strong winds, this is going to very quickly move around that entire plant.
Yeah, so certainly weather conditions are favorable then today, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I want to go back to isobutylene. Ramanan, for folks that live in the area that are watching this, and they're obviously very concerned about what is being omitted from these flames, what can you tell them about their concern, or addressing their concerns about isobutylene, and what should they do?
Well, they should definitely, if they can get out of that area safely, they should. If they cannot, they should they should shelter in place. Anything to minimize exposure to external air would be very good. So if they've got the air conditioners that they've got turned on, it might be a good idea to turn it off at this time, so that they minimize air exchange with the environment.
Well, we know Crosby ISD has already done that. They've shut down, they've incapacitated the HVAC systems at all of the in all of the buildings within the school district, is what we're being told.
That is fantastic.
Ramanan, we certainly appreciate your insight on this. Is there anything else that you wanted to add regarding this chemical firefight?
Not at this time. I certainly hope that they can find a way to control this fire as quickly as they can, and you know, and really go aggressively with the foam and water to bring this under control.
Thank you very much. Again, we were just speaking with Ramanan Kashin-Morty. He is a University of Houston chemical engineering professor.
I want to read a statement that was just issued by John Foley, the president and CEO of Chemco. It says, quote, "There was an incident resulting in an ignition and fire today, April 4th, 2019, at Chemco LLC in Crosby. We are deeply saddened to confirm at this time that there have been injuries and one fatality. Those injured have been transported for medical treatment. Our hearts and prayers go out to the individuals involved, as well as our first responders, employees, and our community. We have activated the company's emergency response team and incident command center. We are working with local first responders to extinguish the fire. We will give another update as additional information becomes available. We apologize for any inconvenience to residents in the vicinity. The well-being of our people, neighbors, and the environment remain our top priority." So that's new information coming into our newsroom. Christine, a statement issued by John Foley, the president and CEO of Chemco. Here we are coming up at 1:30 in the afternoon, about 2.5 hours after this fire is believed to have started.
And as far as we know, a press conference is still scheduled for 1:30. It was originally scheduled for around 1 o'clock. That has been pushed back. We are hearing from our Phil Archer, who is within a safe distance of the chemical fire, that fire crews are making headway on it, that it is not as large as it once was. We are getting, we're looking at recorded video right now. This was taken by Sky 2 earlier on. We're not getting a live picture, but this is what that plume of smoke looked like. And again, Phil is saying that they are making progress on this firefight.
And isobutylene, according to authorities, is initially what started this fire, but at this hour, still unclear exactly what type of chemicals are burning. We are expecting, as you mentioned, an update from authorities here shortly, hopefully in the next couple of minutes. We do know in terms of air quality, a lot of folks very concerned, obviously, about the air and what they're breathing in when they look up in the sky and see that huge plume of black smoke. The TCEQ tweeting out about an hour ago that the agency was sending a team of investigators from the Houston Regional Office to assess the situation there on the ground.
And we do want to check in with Phil Archer here in just a moment. But again, in discussing and talking about the air quality concerns, the mobile air quality monitoring devices, they only read every 90 minutes. And that's problematic in situations like this, where it is an ever-changing and fluid situation, and you are seeing this large plume of smoke grow and grow and grow. And right now, we do know that there is this shelter in place for folks residents within a mile radius of this chemical plant. But we do want to check right now in with Channel 2's Phil Archer, who is within a safe distance of this fire. Hi, Phil. What have you learned?
How are you doing? Yeah, we're about 2 miles away. We're out on Highway 90, as a matter of fact, at the marshalling area where the press is gathering up waiting for the sheriff. And I can show you, we can see from the ground that the smoke coming up now compared to what we were seeing about an hour ago, much fainter. As a matter of fact, right now it's actually hard to see. Now, that's been happening. There's a little white smoke. That's a good sign. That's an indication that the firefighters there at the scene have got a handle on it. It doesn't necessarily mean they've got it out, but they're putting a dent in it. About 30 minutes ago, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez tweeted that they have the fire contained, which means that it is not spreading, at least at this point, and they got it surrounded and are busily trying to get it out. And again, good sign there when you see very little black smoke coming up. 2 hours ago, it looked like a solid black column boiling up. Now, we're at a gas station, as I said, about 2 miles from the actual scene, because that's as far as we can get in. A little while ago, we talked to a pipe fitter who was in that plant when it exploded, when there was an explosion and the fire started. He told us that what he saw was a fire start in a tank that held product, and we know that product was isobutylene. That pipe fitter's name, Justin Trahan. We've got some of him right here. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Honestly, there seemed to be some kind of a panic over the radio, and then as we looked up, there was a bunch of water hoses trying to put out the fire, I guess, maybe even something small initially. We couldn't quite see it from where we were at. But then it seemed like the tank ignited, and then there was just an explosion, and everybody started panicking.
So that's what's burning physically, is a tank with some product in it?
With some product in it.
Okay. And we know that 2 people were injured. We're being told 1 person was killed. Were you aware that there were any casualties as a result of that?
Judging by the size of the explosion, I would assume there was casualties, but I didn't know about the exact numbers.
Okay. So as soon as that happened, what did you do?
We all got up with our superiors and immediately promptly left. And we ended up having to jump the fence to actually get out of there because all the gates are locked, of course.
Right. What does that plant do?
It's both a storage facility and they actually make chemicals.
Okay.
So they have a variety of different chemicals and processes that actually occur there.
Can you estimate about how many people would have been in the plant when this happened?
I don't know, actually. I'm
Tens,
not quite
hundreds,
sure.
Thousands?
Probably at or above 100.
Okay, that was Justin Trahan, who was in the plant, describing what he saw and heard, and he and the guys he was working with got out of there pretty quick after that explosion happened. And again, you can see it's hard to see any smoke coming up now. There is a faint trace of black smoke. You can see a little more bubbling up now as the firefighters in there, the fire companies that are in there now, are trying to knock that flame out so they can go in and see what happened. Now, we are waiting to get some more information. What we know now is we know that isobutylene is the product. a gasoline additive. We know 2 workers in the plant were injured and that 1 was killed. We're hoping to get some more detail from the sheriff. He is on his way here. You can see the media contingent here waiting for him. We're expecting him to be here any minute to bring us up to date on what they know about how this happened, what caused it, all of the things, the important things we need to know, and especially about how dangerous that cloud of smoke is. So as soon as we've got him, we'll be back to you live with him. Reporting live in Crosby, I'm Phil Archer, KPRC Channel 2 News.
All right, Phil, appreciate it. Thanks so much. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez tweeting out just a short time ago that the EPA is on the ground and in the air right now, and as of right now, there is no actionable detections at this time. Just to give you a little background on the chemical that's burning, isobutylene, let's take a closer look at what exactly isobutylene is. It's a colorless gas. It can have a faint, like petroleum odor. It's easily ignited. It's used in the production of gasoline, high octane aviation gasoline. Here are some of the health impacts. Inhaling it can cause dizziness, drowsiness, and in some cases unconsciousness. If you get it in your eyes or on your skin, it may cause some irritation. But again, we are waiting on an update from Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, who is said to be en route to the location where our Phil Archer is. And Christine, from his live shot, right behind Phil, you know, he pointed to that plume of smoke. It looks dramatically different from what we saw about 45 minutes ago when we had Sky 2 over the scene. Yeah, and the picture that we were just showing following Phil's live shot was actually recorded from earlier, so not to be confused with what it looks like right now. What it looks like right now, from what we can tell from Phil's shot, was that it has strongly dissipated, and it is not nowhere near the same size that it was an hour or 2 ago when it started around 11 o'clock. And when we were hearing from that Chemco worker saying that the isobutylene is what caused the fire inside of that tank. And from our University of Houston professor, the chemical engineering professor, the concern now is sort of the wild card of, okay, so you have isobutylene that's burning in that tank, but did it mix with any other chemicals? And what does that mean from there? And that's the concern, and that's a question that we have not been able to get an answer to at this point, and not really hearing from too many authorities surrounding this. Right, and I want to run through some of those chemicals and products that we've been mentioning here on our air that are processed at the Chemco facility. They include brake fluid products, antifreeze, oil field products, and glycol products. So those are just a few of the things, of the types of chemicals that are being processed at that plant. Are they all involved in this fire? We don't know at this point. Right. That's something that we're working to find out right now. The president and CEO of Chemco issuing a statement earlier that we got into our newsroom, confirming that there was 1 fatality and that the other 2 who have been injured have been transported for medical treatment. We don't know the extent of their injuries or what their conditions are right now, but they are being tended to. First responders on the scene right now, making some serious headway in that firefight, as we saw from Phil Archer's live shot. Yes, and that shelter in place is still in place for residents within a 1-mile radius of this chemical plant. Yeah, that's something that hasn't changed, and we are awaiting this press conference that was scheduled to begin at 1, then pushed back to 1:30. We are now approaching 1:38, still waiting to get some updated information on this situation out there, going on more than 2.5 hours now that the fire is burning. But again, we're getting this picture that you're looking at, or was just looking at a moment ago, was shot earlier from Sky 2. We have learned from Phil Archer that that picture looks drastically different now in the positive way, that that plume of smoke is not what it is in this picture, and it has slowly started to be put out. All right, got some new information we want to pass along to you right now. This is a tweet from Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner. This is Adrian Garcia. He says, as a precaution, this is in a tweet, as a precaution amid the current shelter in place, Harris County Precinct 2 is temporarily closing the following Crosby facilities: Crosby Park, the Crosby Sports Complex, and the Crosby Community Center. That's from Harris County Commissioner Precinct 2, Adrian Garcia's office. He tweeted that just a short time ago. We've also heard in a tweet from Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, and one of the things that she mentioned in her tweet is that Harris County is currently working with its emergency partners on this. Emergency partners that most likely include the EPA, because we know that the EPA is on the ground and in the air right now, and that there's been no actionable detections. The TCEQ also getting involved in what's happening at the scene right now. Investigators from the Houston Regional Office are there to assess the situation as well. So they'll be assisting. So this is, you've got multiple agencies right now who are all beginning to come together and work together on this one as firefighters work to get the upper hand on that chemical fire.
Yeah, and a lot of folks in town because of the investigation that continues into the ITC chemical storage facility fire just a few weeks ago. So as you mentioned, and this is new information just within a few minutes ago, that the EPA is on the air and on the ground, and at this point, no actionable detections, which is a big development considering that there's a lot of concern surrounding air quality. So that's new information, and they're saying there's no actionable detections at this time.
And another tweet from Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. This is brand new. He says a transfer line ignited in the area of a tank with isobutylene, and the tank caught on fire. An adjacent storage building with solid goods also caught fire, trying to contain it. That speaks to what the Harris County Fire Marshal tweeted out a while ago. It was their impression that some kind of a warehouse had caught fire as well. So that kind of goes along with what the sheriff just tweeted out, that an adjacent storage building with solid goods inside also caught fire. Again, if you were just joining us here at 1:40 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, one person was killed, 2 others injured in an explosion and fire at the Chemco chemical plant in Crosby. You are looking at video that was taken earlier from our Sky 2 that shows that huge plume of choking black smoke that was rising high into the air. Our Phil Archer was on the ground a short time ago and told us it appears that firefighters are now getting the upper hand on this, and that it appears that they have that fire under control. So again, this is video that was shot earlier by our Sky 2. An isobutylene tank appears to be the source of the explosion, and that explosion led to a fire at an adjacent storage building that contained some solid goods. And according to Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, that's what's burning right now. Yeah, and additional information coming from Sheriff Gonzalez at this time, saying parents with kids in impacted schools, we're working with all school districts in real time. This isn't a tweet, trying to coordinate safe release of all children as soon as possible. We have law enforcement personnel at each site assisting. And coming from Sheriff Gonzalez, of course, the schools that are sheltered in place out of an abundance of caution still: Crosby ISD, Galena Park, Channelview, and Sheldon ISD. That was lifted. Parents are able to go pick up their kids, but of course they're keeping their eye on this situation. You got to take all the necessary steps when you're talking about a situation as volatile as this one. This is a live picture now from Sky 2 over the Chemco chemical plant in Crosby, where shelter in place within a 1-mile radius continues to remain in effect. Christine, this looks a lot different from what we were showing earlier. Very different. Compared to what we saw just 45 minutes ago. We're just seeing small little plumes of black smoke, but there's a lot of gray mixed in with that smoke, which is something that we didn't see earlier. I mean, that fire was blowing and going for much of the morning into the lunch hour, and now it seems to have taken a turn for the better. With all the first responders who were there on scene trying to get the upper hand on this. Yeah, seeing the white smoke is always a good sign in firefights like this, which we learned with the ITC storage facility fire as well. But yes, this is a very drastic picture than what we saw even just a few minutes ago. Again, we're getting a live look from Sky 2. Eric Brate standing by now. Eric, what do you got?
Well, it's interesting that the fire is out now. Earlier, when the fire was going, the heat generated from the fire caused the smoke to really climb into the atmosphere. And it was actually a good thing on a day when, number one, we don't have any wind, and number two, when we've got high pressure. So a lot of those contaminants were way up in the atmosphere away from ground level. The one thing I think is interesting now is, now that they're getting control of the fire and the flames are out, we don't necessarily know that chemicals are not being released anymore. So there may be still an issue with fumes in the area. It may look like things are really, really improving, but from the standpoint of contaminants, number one, we've got a whole potpourri of chemicals that this company works with. So the professor that we had from the University of Houston made a very good point. It started with one chemical, but damage to other tanks, warehouse facility, could mean that there are other fumes being released after this fire is out. So even though the fire is nearly out, it looks like, still some burning going on obviously there. We're not necessarily out of the woods as far as air contamination around the plant. There may be chemicals being released even after the fire was out. With the ITC facility, we had benzene being released even after the fire was out. So it's not necessarily that we're out of the woods now that the fire is out. It's really going to be until we get the data from the air testing.
Well, I know, and it's so early on in this investigation, obviously, since we're still seeing smoke pouring out of this facility. But one of the things that Sheriff Gonzalez mentioned in his tweet was that a storage building, an adjacent storage building, caught fire with solid goods inside. I'm sure folks who are tuning in, watching us right now at home or on their mobile app are like, okay, so what are the solid goods?
Yeah.
Right. That's something that, you know, certainly a lot of folks want to know. What those solid goods, what are we talking about here? Again, those are questions that we're going to work to get answered for you. Want to pass along some new information just into our newsroom. This is from Kipp. They're telling us that given the recent breaking news about today's chemical plant fire in Crosby, the Northeast campus is going to shelter-in-place mode right now. They will continue to monitor the advisories that are being put out from Harris County and resume their regular schedule once they know that the area is deemed safe by officials. So, Christine, a lot of folks, school districts, educators in particular, paying extremely close attention to what's happening in the northeastern part of our county.
Well, public safety is certainly number one, and as we await information and await for this fire to be completely put out, that's the best that you can do, is just out of abundance of caution, just do what you can to keep the public and specifically those students and kids safe. So now, coming up on 1:46 now, almost 3 hours since an explosion led to a fire at the Chemco facility there. We know isobutylene in a tank is what caused that fire, spread to an adjacent tank that had some sort of solid goods inside. And there does remain a shelter in place, a 1 mile radius for residents living within that 1 mile radius of that plant. That remains in place at this hour, waiting to hear from officials any time now to hopefully answer some of residents and media's questions surrounding this incident. We do know that one employee is dead. 2 are being treated for injuries. We don't know their conditions at this hour. We do know that back in 2010, a similar situation occurred and 3 employees were injured. So this is not the first time something like this has happened with this Chemco facility. And we are awaiting this press conference to get some questions answered. And residents very concerned about the air that they're breathing as a result of this fire. The TCEQ just tweeted that the agency has sent emergency response personnel and redirected one of its air quality monitoring vans to that vicinity in Crosby. TCEQ is also sending a contractor with handheld monitoring equipment. So they are taking a very active role here, Christine, as you know, folks who, for the better part of 3.5, almost 3 hours. Yeah, have been looking into the sky and seeing this huge plume of black smoke, wondering, okay, there's some kind of a fire. It doesn't look good. How is the air that I'm breathing in? So TCEQ taking a very active role in trying to get answers for residents. Want to go to Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez right now, who is holding a news conference. Let's listen in.
Can I move these down somehow?
Hold on a second. Stand by. Stand by. Rachel, just a second. Para que te bajen un poquito.
Sí, por favor.
I'll just answer you.
Good afternoon. We're actively monitoring and responding to this active incident. We are saddened, and my heart and our hearts go out to the families of those who were injured and the person who passed away as a result of the situation. You have here our law enforcement partners that are working to support the fire chief and the company in addressing this incident. As we speak, Harris County's air monitoring operation is collecting readings and standing up a website so they can make sure to have the information as soon as they receive it. The EPA has been monitoring the air quality and will be providing a report shortly. And we will continue watching and responding. I know it is disturbing. It is disturbing and it is problematic that we're seeing this incident in a facility, especially on the heels of ITC. We will work with our partners to put this out, to continue responding, and to address this situation as quickly and in the best way possible. Let me introduce our sheriff, who will provide a law enforcement update. Right now, the call is for the community to heed the advice of law enforcement. This is an ongoing, dynamic, evolving incident, and folks need to be aware and to respond to the information that law enforcement is providing. Estamos aquí respondiendo a este incidente que acaba de empezar. Tenemos aquí todos nuestros socios de servicios y también estamos monitoreando el aire. Nos da mucha tristeza la muerte que ha sucedido como resultado de este incidente y también las personas que se han visto afectadas y que están en este momento en el hospital. Tenemos aquí socios trabajando para contener el incendio, apoyando a la compañía y también apoyando al jefe de policías de Crosby al apagar este incendio. El condado en este momento está monitoreando la calidad del agua y también creando la página web para proveer información. Tenemos aquí al gobierno federal, al EPA, quien nos va a dar información acerca de la calidad del aire. Sus medidas hasta ahora no han mostrado calidad problemática. Seguiremos monitoreando y respondiendo a esta situación. Es muy problemático el hecho de que hay aquí otra situación en otra compañía, ya justo después del incidente que sucedió hace un par de semanas y que continúa en la compañía de ITC. Vamos a trabajar para ayudar a los socios a apagar este incendio, para responder a la situación, y en este momento se le pide a la comunidad que se mantenga al tanto con la información que estamos poniendo a través de los medios, ya que esta situación continuamos respondiendo. Es una situación dinámica que acaba de comenzar y va a seguir evolucionando. Voy a presentar ahora al sheriff, quien va a dar información acerca de la situación. Sure.
Thank you, Judge. First, on behalf of the Harris County Sheriff's Office, our condolences go out to the individual that has lost his or her life, as well as the other two that are still battling for their life, and our condolences to the family. Our Harris County Sheriff's Office industrial team, as well as our patrol officers, are out here assisting with both support and perimeter control. This is a multi-agency response, so we're also working with the Harris County Precinct 3 Constable's Office, DPS, and other law enforcement agencies as well. We understand that some of the schools obviously are sheltered in place in the area, so we're working in real time with those school districts right now so we could work on an orderly plan to make sure that we could get those children into their parents' arms and get them back home as quickly as possible. We hope to be able to roll out a plan here in the next few minutes or so as soon as this press conference is over. Obviously, our main focus right now is to make sure that we're in support to try to contain this. It's my understanding that a transfer line is what initially ignited, and then an adjacent tank is what caught fire with isobutylene, and then an adjacent storage container next to that as well. Our understanding is that there are no active readings in the area, neither on the air or on the ground right now, but there are some other fluids or chemicals in the complex that are concerning to us as well, so we're actively monitoring that, and we'll update as soon as we know something as well. We know that getting the information to you is very critical, so from a public safety standpoint, that's what we want right now, just for the public to follow all of your news channels so they can get the most recent information on any additional evacuations or anything right now. There is a shelter in place for the area right now, and we'll update that as soon as we know something. We're on the ground. I'm out here on the ground with the judge. Also, Commissioner Garcia's office is represented here as well. So everybody's working together as well as with law enforcement. En este momento estamos trabajando con los distritos escolares para desarrollar un plan para poder que los niños puedan salir de las escuelas. Estamos monitoreando lo que está pasando. Está aquí la oficina del alguacil del condado de Harris, también con otros elementos también de otros departamentos para estar seguro que la seguridad pública sea la prioridad número uno. Entonces todo esto es una situación que se está desarrollando en tiempo real, es una situación dinámica y tan pronto que sepamos algo, le dejamos saber a los medios para que lo puedan reportar a la comunidad. At this time, I'll turn it over to Rachel. Before we take any questions, I'll turn it over to Rachel with a fire marshal's office.
So the Harris County Fire Marshal's Office was notified around 11 a.m. this morning of a fire and explosion at the Kimco facility. Hazmat crews and fire investigators, as well as inspectors, also arrived on scene shortly thereafter. We are working with the company to determine exactly what chemicals are on site and in the warehouse that is on fire. As the sheriff said, we believe it started with an isobutylene transfer line, and then that started the fire, which then spread to the warehouse. Fire crews are working under incident command with Crosby Fire Department, have called in numerous assets to assist with the fire. They are working hard and safe to get the fire out as soon as possible with as little risk to the community as possible. We are also working and aware of the shelter in place. EPA has been on site assisting with monitoring and has found no detectable or actionable detectable items in the air as of right now. Thank you.
Can you tell us about any other chemicals on site?
EPA is on site at this point with our aerial aspect plane, our mobile Taga bus, and teams out in the field. As was said, at this point, we have not seen any detections at action levels. We'll continue to be monitoring throughout the community until the fire is out.
And what's the status of the fire right now? The smoke is digressed a lot, very little coming up. Is it out or close to it?
When we left to come over here, it was still going. We have numerous assets, some that actually came from the ITC facility to come assist with the putting out the fire. So they are working on it. The plume, as you can probably see, is smaller. So I think they are making progress. But as soon as we get back, we'll get an update to provide you more info.
The fire is contained?
It's contained to the unit. They are working to keep it cooled so it doesn't spread to more of the different items tanks that are there. So they are working on that. They have a plan. They're executing the plan, and it should be out soon.
Is it only the isobutylene that's burning right now?
Right now, that's all that we are aware that's burning. It did go to a warehouse that has some dry chemical storage. The company is working on getting us a complete list of that. But again, we've got EPA monitoring, and we know right now there's nothing in the air.
So there are other chemicals burning. You just don't know what they are.
Yeah, they're dry chemicals in a warehouse. They explained it to me as dry combustibles. So again, we don't have a specific list, but we are working with the company to get that.
We talked to a couple of people earlier who said they had evacuated that area. Mm-hmm. Is there an evacuation order in place for anyone in the area?
There is no evacuation order that's been in place that we are aware of. Some of the local schools did shelter in place, and we are working with them right now to get them the information about the air monitoring so we can make the decision to let the kids go home from school.
The gentlemen who were injured and the one who was killed, where were they in the plant? Do you know?
That's still under investigation. Right now, our investigators are on site, and they are working with people from the plant. They're doing interviews, so we're trying to get all that information. The two that were life-flighted are in critical condition.
Do you know what this company, and this may be for the EPA, do you know what this company's history is as far as these kinds of incidents go?
I don't have that information right now. It'll be part of our investigation.
How reliable is that real-time air and ground monitoring? Or does it take some time to know what's actually in the air, your readings, and possibly in the water?
Our readings are real time, so if we are seeing anything, we get called, and at that time we let the incident command know what we're seeing.
Explain to our viewers how that works. How do you monitor the air?
Well, we have handheld monitors, so we have a team out with a handheld monitor, and then we have what's called our TAGA, or Trace Atmospheric Gas Asset, and I don't know for sure, but our TAGA bus, which was has been down in Deer Park, they're up here, and they can read values down to parts per billion, which are well below any actionable levels. So they're out, give us real-time readings, as well as the aspect flight that has been out in the plume this morning as well.
What is the danger level for people in Crosby and also just in some of the surrounding cities as well?
Well, at this point, again, everything seems to be contained. So they're actively trying to distinguish or extinguish the flame. You know, my personal concern is that there are other tanks on the facility. So until we get an accurate description of everything that's there and levels and all that, then, you know, obviously this is still a dynamic situation. So we want to manage expectations a little bit. We're on the ground here. As soon as we get more information, we'll be able to report it. This is just an initial pressure, if you will, just to give you some of the basics that we have. It's still ongoing. It's still active investigation. We have a lot of different partners, both on the fire side of things as well as on the police side. So as soon as we know something, we'll report it back. We have been in touch with the company officials as well. So again, as soon as we learn more about what else is on site, then we'll be able to report more accurately.
Why is that such a process? Shouldn't the company have an inventory of what's on site that they just hand to you?
Well, we have a lot of personnel on site, so we're trying to coordinate them arriving on the site and just talking to everybody. So it's a process. We learn from all of these, and you know we'll learn from this one in terms of what they have. They may already have the information, but when we came over here, I still didn't have it.
You just mentioned that the main concern is to make sure that, and she mentioned that it's contained.
Yeah.
However, we want to know what is the probability that this will start all over again. We saw what happened in ITC, where it started again, and so the community wants to know. En español también, por favor.
Well, I mean, it could happen again, as we've seen with ITC. Each situation is different. This is a dynamic situation. We've got to, you know, touch base with our fire personnel that are on the scene and the other professionals there. So, again, as soon as we know something, we'll report it back. We don't know the extent of this, and so we're trying to contain it right now. So that's our main focus right now, to notify the community. En este momento no sabemos si puede volver, todavía se está encendiendo el tanque que inició la flama inicial. Entonces, en este momento no está bajo control eso. Entonces, es lo que estamos atendiendo en este momento. Lo mejor es que se pague y se termine todo, pero también puede ocurrir como pasó en día, porque vuelve a encenderse otra vez más, algo más. Entonces, es algo dinámico. So, at this time, that's all we have right now. So, I wish we could give more. And we'll try to work with the company officials as well.
Was the company able to tell you what was in that tank?
The isobutylene.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for people who were not at home when this happened and are going to be coming home shortly, what would you tell them? Should they stay out of the area or go home?
You know, obviously they have to use their best judgment. We don't have a mandatory evacuation or anything of the sort. You know, we're working. Our main priority right now is getting the kids out of there. And then we'll continue to update as we try to do with social media and other platforms to make sure we get the information out. Yes, correct. Yeah, we're working on a plan right now. There are no actionable readings right now, so we think we could do that safely. So we've got police personnel from different agencies at each school right now to coordinate the evacuation of the kids to the parents in an orderly fashion.
Now, which schools? All the schools?
The different schools that are impacted, that are shut down right now. I think within whoever has the shelters in place, so it'll be Crosby, Sheldon, and Channel.
Sheriff, has the water been tested as well?
We have EPA and TCEQs on site as well. They were doing that. I don't have that information.
I mean, fundamentally, it is an ongoing situation. Right now, as we mentioned, EPA is seeing no actionable readings. The county is continuing to monitor the air. The plea to the community is to stay alert and watching any updates that come from all our partners that will continue to keep the community informed where this to take a turn for better or for worse. And so we will be providing information to the community as soon as we have it. En un nivel fundamental, lo que está sucediendo es un incidente que continúa evolucionando. Como se informó, nuestros socios federales no están viendo ninguna medida a la calidad del aire que cause alarma. También el condado está monitoreando el aire. Están todos trabajando por extinguir el incendio, pero se le pide a la comunidad que se mantenga alerta. El condado y todos los socios darán información, sea la situación mejor o peor, en cuanto continúe evolucionando. Thank you all so much.
Can we get your name? Do you mind just...
You've been listening to a news conference near the scene of that Kimco chemical plant fire. We heard from several officials.
Public Information Officer, Harris County Fire Marshal's Office.
Thanks, ma'am.
You've been listening to a news conference. You've been watching a news conference. Several authorities talking about the situation that developed at the Kimco chemical plant in Crosby. We heard from Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, the Harris County Fire Marshal's Office, and an investigator with the EPA. The fire at this hour, according to the fire marshal, has been contained to a unit. They're working to keep it cool. The fire is not out. This all started when a transfer line ignited, causing an explosion and a fire in a tank that contained isobutylene. We're also told that the fire spread to an adjacent building, a warehouse that is storing dry chemicals, dry combustibles. The fire marshal's office saying that they are working on getting a complete list of those chemicals because they still don't know what's burning at this hour. They were not able to get a complete list of chemicals from the company.
That's one thing we learned during this press conference is that they had originally said that it was a building with solid goods, and we said, okay, what are those solid goods? And we learned in that press conference that they are dry combustibles. And again, Sheriff Gonzalez saying that sort of raises concerns. He wants to know wants to see a list of what those dry chemicals look like, what is in there, and that is sort of the wild card at this time. But this originally started with an isobutylene transfer line that ignited, and then that led to an explosion and fire with isobutylene. And
a reporter there on the scene asked a very pointed question, said, hey, I mean, shouldn't the company be able to just hand you all a list of the chemicals that are stored inside of that building? And the sheriff said, you know, we've got people around and we're in the process of working with the company to make sure that we get our hands on that list so we know exactly what we're dealing with there.
Yeah, so waiting on that. And we also learned, we knew that there was one employee that was killed in this explosion, 2 others injured. We learned that the 2 injured are in critical condition, so that is an update. We also heard reporters asking the EPA about the reliability of the air quality monitors, certainly following concern that people have about the air quality. The EPA says that they have different kind of monitors, including these handheld monitors that give real-time readings, not ones that were taken an hour or 2 ago, but real-time readings. And the EPA saying that there is no detections of action levels at this time. So that is seemingly good news for folks in the area.
And the EPA also has a team on the ground walking around with handheld monitors to make sure that the air continues to be safe there. The TCEQ also mentioned in his statements, they have a team there as well assessing the situation. There's been a lot of talk about the shelter in places that have been issued by those school districts. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez saying during that news conference that police personnel will be at all of the different schools that have been impacted by the shelter in place to make sure that when the orders are lifted, that children will get home safely and back to their parents.
Yeah, and again, we're getting new information from Houston ISD saying the plant fire prompts cancellations of outdoor activities at some HISD campuses with reports of the fire burning at the Chemco chemical plant in East Harris County. All outdoor activities at campuses in the east and north areas of the Houston Independent School District have been canceled today. The affected HISD campuses are Robinson, Oates, Hilliard, and Elmore Elementary School, Fur, North Forest High Schools, Fawnwood Early Childhood Center as well.
Right. Also, a new tweet coming into our newsroom from Crosby ISD. It states that we've received notice from Harris County that the shelter in place is only in effect within a 1-mile radius of Chemco. Crosby Kindergarten Center students will continue to shelter in place until further notice.
Yes, and we are going now on 3 hours since the beginning of this explosion and fire. The pictures, Andy, that we're seeing right now live from Sky 2, drastically different than what we saw even an hour ago. That plume of smoke is much smaller. So again, we're getting a side-by-side look now. On the left side of the screen, that's what it looked like not too long ago. On the right side, we're seeing a drastically different picture, which certainly prompts some hope that this is hopefully going to be out soon.
And a spokesperson for the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, part of that joint news conference, she said that the fire is contained to a unit there. First responders are now working to keep it cool and that it should be out soon, but it is currently not out. As you can see from the live picture from Sky 2, you can see where that fire is contained to in that unit that is still burning. One of the things, Christine, that I thought was really interesting that was pointed out, a lot of the assets from the ITC tank farm fire are now being moved up to Northeast Harris County to Chemco to assist in the effort to get that fire put out, especially given the fact that they're dealing with chemicals in dry storage, chemicals that they don't really know what they are at this point.
Yes, that's certainly the wild card. And I think that we had been waiting to hear from county officials as well as the EPA regarding this situation. And I think compared to the situation with the ITC chemical fire, which we took forever, it felt like, to get any sort of air quality monitor readings, and to hear from the EPA saying, hey, these readings are in real time and there are no detections of action levels at that time. So I think that's big news for folks in the area.
Big news, and hopefully give them some peace of mind, and also the TCEQ on scene as well, assisting with this in terms of dealing with the air qualities to, sort of reaffirm what the EPA's findings are. Again, almost 10 minutes after 2 here. On a Tuesday, our extended coverage continues of the Chemco chemical plant fire up in Crosby. This all started around 11 o'clock this morning. A transfer line ignited, causing an explosion and a fire in a tank with isobutylene inside. That fire, according to officials, then spread to an adjacent building where dry chemicals are being stored. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez saying that they do not have a complete list of the chemicals burning, nor does the Harris County Fire Marshal's office. They're in the process of working with Chemco officials to get that list so they know what types of chemicals continue to burn so that they can fight that fire accordingly. The fire contained to a unit there, but is not completely out. That spokesperson for the Fire Marshal's office, all she could say is that she believes that the fire should be out soon.
Soon, yes, that is certainly the hope. And we learned in that press conference, so we know that 1 employee was killed and 2 others are in critical condition. And that was new information as far as the 2 other employees in critical condition, certainly thinking of them and quick recovery at this hour. So back in 2010, December of 2010, we know that a similar situation occurred at the Chemco plant in which 3 employees were hurt. So this is not the first time that this plant has seen issues like this.
No, it's not. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, back in 2017, Chemco was the subject of a lawsuit. A lawsuit was filed against the company for not following the letter of the law in terms of air and water emissions. And it was a complaint that had sparked an investigation the year before, back in 2016, sparked an investigation by Harris County Pollution Control. Black residue was reported in a creek downstream from Chemco. An investigator went out there to do the job, to follow up on this complaint, and this is a quote, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but this is a quote that our investigator Joel Isobutylene gave to us earlier, that investigator by the end of the case had an orange knot on the back of her neck and wasn't feeling well, was feeling kind of dizzy. That was from the 2016 investigation launched against Chemco after someone spotted some kind of black sludge, black gook in a creek downstream from that chemical facility.
Yeah, we do know that Chemco's parent company, ORG Chemical Holdings, that's the parent company. And in case you're just tuning in and you want to learn more about this company, where this fire is located is a working plant. It processes and manufactures several different chemicals and products, including brake fluid, glycol, antifreeze products, oil field products, cement grinding products, a number of different types of specialized chemicals at this particular plant. And one of the questions that we have now following this press conference is, we know the isobutylene is what caused this fire on a transfer line, and it's been burning. It spread to another area where there were solid goods, and we were wondering, okay, what are those solid goods? We've learned in this press conference that they're dry combustibles, dry chemicals, and the Sheriff Gonzalez, is now asking, okay, I want to see a list of what those dry chemicals are, since they are burning in conjunction with the isobutylene.
Noticeably absent from that joint news conference was a representative from Chemco. The CEO issued a statement earlier, John Foley, summing it up. Certainly the company extending its thoughts and prayers to the worker who was killed and the other two who were critically injured, and apologized for any inconvenience that this may have caused to its neighbors, to people in the vicinity, and that they are continuing to work with first responders on getting the flames put out. That basically is just kind of a summation of a lengthy statement that was issued, but we have yet to hear from a representative from Chemco on camera. Still unclear at this hour, at 2:15 in the afternoon, what kind of dry combustible chemicals were burning inside of that storage facility, inside of that warehouse that was adjacent to that tank that exploded, that tank of isobutylene. So authorities, the spokesperson from the fire marshal's office said it, Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said it. You know, we've got people on the ground there. We're trying to work with this. We're trying to work with the company. We're trying to work with Chemco so we can get that list in our hands. We do want to bring in Chief Meteorologist Frank Billingsley. Yes, thank you. We've been out here for 3 hours, and we've just seen a few hours ago that plume of smoke was so large. Yep. And now we're looking at something that is much smaller. And we were talking with Eric about how the wind speed really has played a role in these type of chemical fires. And today, really, before this all happened, a bluebird day, the sun was shining, cool temperatures, winds not very strong.
Well, we have high pressure that's just off to about Montgomery County. That's where it's centered. So just off to the north. And around that, you have that very slow clockwise flow. When it's right over you, that's when you get very calm wind. And you can see it's calm in Crosby, 5 miles an hour in Dayton. Baytown is calm, 6 miles an hour in Clear Lake. So it's very, very quiet as far as the winds are concerned. Now, what's interesting is when this system was really going, that heat from all of those flames, that goes up. Warm air rises, cold air sinks. So that warms the air. It goes up. It takes that plume of smoke with it. And so a lot of those chemicals are way above the ground. But now that the fire is out and the flames are down, you don't have that heat source to take everything up into the atmosphere, so it's going to stay at ground level. So that's not a particularly good scenario. Here's a bigger version here, and you can see this is what I'm talking about. There's the high sitting right there over, looks like Magnolia. So it's sitting right there in western Montgomery County, and the winds around this are very slow. You see them wrapping around. So we've got a lot of calm air here, 3, 5, 7 miles an hour. Certainly no wind gusts to speak of. Katie's reporting 15, but it's not a gusty day. And the future cast doesn't change much because that high is going to slowly move off to the east. So this is what we continue to see, calm 3, 4 miles an hour, even into this evening. This is going to go to midnight, and you'll see 3, 5 mile an hour winds. So it doesn't change this evening. And even into the overnight through tomorrow morning, this is going to stop at 7, 8 o'clock, 3, 4, 5 mile an hour winds. But you can see, look at the arrows, that's beginning to shift. So once the high moves off to the east, then we start to see more of a southeast flow that picks up by tomorrow afternoon. We're at 13, 14 miles an hour. That will continue to take anything that is there off from southeast to northwest. So that clearly would be something that Kingwood, Atascocita, those areas are going to have to pay close attention tomorrow, depending on what this is and what really they're looking at. And I don't know that we have a good answer for that just yet.
No. We don't. Frank, officials at the news conference saying there's a list somewhere that Chemco has, a list of all the dry combustible chemicals in that warehouse that are stored there, but they just don't know what's burning.
Right, and some chemicals can break down very quickly. And sunlight can break them down, just like water can break them down. I mean, chemicals do that, they break down, but until we know what is there, what I can tell you is now that this fire is out, what is there is going to stay closer to the ground than it was earlier. Because earlier, when the fire was going, heat rises, it gets into the upper part of the atmosphere away from people. Now that that fire is out, what's there, and you can see what's there is going to look like. Remember when we had the fog on New Year's Eve and the fireworks, and the fog brought the fireworks smoke down because the fog was very calm. Very calm air, and so it brings it down. I'm not expecting any fog, but with very calm air, nothing to blow this around and get it out of there and disperse it. That's going to be an issue.
Well, the EPA and TCEQ will be there on the ground monitoring that air quality from here on out.
I can tell you it's moderate. It's an 82. Anything basically 50 to 100 is considered moderate. And right now in the 1 o'clock hour, and we'll get the 2 o'clock shortly, but it was moderate and 82 for particulate matter. Ozone is always an issue when we have a lot of sunlight, because sunlight breaks down automobile emissions, sulfur oxide and nitrous oxides, and it breaks it down so it becomes an S and an O and an N and an O, and that extra O attaches to 2 oxygen molecules, so you get 3, and that's ozone. So that's how ozone forms. That sunlight breaks down those car emissions and other emissions to break down. So ozone's always kind of there when it's a bright, sunny bluebird day like this, but it's gone higher simply because of the particulate matter across the area, the pollution in the air today. So it's definitely in the moderate range. We were under an ozone watch for today anyway, because we were anticipating a lot of sunshine. But now this is just adding to that. The bottom line is, if you have any kind of health or respiratory issues and you're in the northwest side, if you're north of I-10 or you're east of 59, stay put.
All right, Frank, thanks so much. I want to pass along some new information to you. Crosby ISD tweeting out, "We have just received notice that the shelter in place has been officially lifted for all campuses. We will proceed with normal dismissal procedures. However, pre-kinder students who are not released at noon will need to be picked up by parents at CKC. If you do not have a car tag, you'll need to enter the building with an ID to pick up your pre-K student. All after-school activities are canceled."
And also getting a new tweet from Channelview ISD saying that students and staff remain indoors as a safety precaution. Campuses will dismiss according to the normal dismissal schedule.
All right, I want to tell you about some new information we are getting from HISD right now. The plant fire prompting the cancellation of outdoor activities at some HISD campuses, with reports of a fire burning at the Chemco plant in East Harris County. On Tuesday, all outdoor activities at campuses in the east and north areas of the Houston Independent School District have been canceled today. The affected HISD campuses are Robinson, Oates, Hilliard, and Elmore Elementary Schools, Fur, North Forest High Schools, and Fonwood Early Child Center. So getting some new developments out of our local school districts. Officials and administrators, educators, no doubt paying extremely close attention to this fluid situation that is still developing at this hour up in the northeastern part of Harris County in Crosby.
Yeah, going on 3.5 hours now since that explosion and fire had begun. Looking at a live picture right there on the right side of your screen. That fire, that looks like that plume of black smoke is actually increasing a little bit from what we saw just a little bit ago, but significantly smaller and less dramatic than it looked even an hour ago. So it looks like crews are making some headway on their firefight on the ground. Again, 3.5 hours into this, we just heard from Harris County officials as well as the EPA and Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo addressing questions from the media regarding this. And we did learn, so we do know that one employee, Chemco employee, has been killed. 2 others are critically injured from this. No exact information regarding the situation in which that occurred, but certainly thinking about the families of those that have been impacted by this as this firefight does continue. We also heard from the EPA in that press conference, which we know a lot of people were listening to quite closely because of air quality concerns following this fire, and the EPA has said that they have resources on air and on the ground, and at this point there's been no detections of action levels at this time.
Yeah, and to follow up what you just said in terms of the assets that are on the ground, we're talking about teams on the ground with handheld monitors getting air quality measurements in real time, and the TCEQ also part of that effort to make sure that the air continues to remain safe as that fire continues to burn. According to that spokesperson from the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, we heard from her that the fire is being contained to a unit there and that first responders are working to keep it cool. You can see there on the right side of your screen that plume of smoke that still exists. More than 3 hours after this fire ignited. The fire contained to a unit. She had said that this should be out soon, but they are working on getting a complete list of chemicals that were stored in a warehouse adjacent to that tank that exploded and caught fire. So that warehouse caught fire, and some unknown chemicals continue to burn at this hour. Officials saying that they are working with the company right now to get a complete list of chemicals so that firefighters there on the front lines know what they're dealing with. We also have been told a lot of the assets that were put into place to fight the ITC tank farm fire in Deer Park, some of those assets are being moved right now up to Crosby to assist with the firefight there.
And that's really been that's been one of the focuses, and that's one of the things that Sheriff Gonzalez mentioned was his concerns about these solid goods. So before the press conference, we know that isobutylene is what was burning, but we didn't know that big question mark was what are those solid goods that are on fire? And learning that they're dry chemicals, dry combustibles, the sheriff asking for a list and wondering, you know, shouldn't the company be able to provide a list of what is in those tanks? And so we're waiting to find out what else is burning with the isobutylene, because that sort of changes the composition of what fumes are being coming out of this fire.
Yeah, it was a point that was brought up by one of the reporters there on the scene. You know, he asked the question, hey, I mean, shouldn't the company just be able to say, here you go, here's a list of what we have inside of this warehouse? Well, that hasn't happened yet. The sheriff, the spokesperson from the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, they both said that they're working now with the company to try to get that list as soon as possible so that they know what they're dealing with. We have a new tweet that we want to pass along to you right now from the Houston Health Department. It says, we continue to monitor the fire in Crosby and will deploy additional air quality monitoring resources if the threat to Houston increases or a jurisdiction requests assistance. So the health department now offering its services to the TCEQ and the EPA, who are both there on the scene, monitoring air quality in the wake of this explosion and fire that took place around 11 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, and the shelter in place is still in effect for residents within a 1 mile radius of this plant in Crosby. That has been in place for just a few hours now, and that's what Harris County officials are saying, sort of heed the advice of law enforcement, and they're saying, hey, if you're within a mile of this plant, shelter in place until further notice out of an abundance of caution. Despite the readings, the real-time readings from these air quality monitors from the EPA. So I think it's out of abundance of caution as this fire continues to burn for folks living in and around that area.
And we talked about Crosby ISD releasing students to parents and letting them go home. This should be peace of mind for those of you who are watching us right now and you live in the Crosby area. You're watching us at home, getting ready to go pick up your kid or on your mobile device. Police personnel will be at all of these campuses that have been impacted by this shelter in place. That was something that Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said. He was asked about that in terms of how is the dismissal going to work, and he made it a point to say that they're going to have law enforcement there to make sure that that process runs smoothly at all of the schools within Crosby ISD. So certainly for parents, we hope that gives them peace of mind.
Yes, and again, just to reiterate what we're looking at, so we're getting a side-by-side view. The right side of your screen is Sky 2, a live picture, and the plume of smoke that you're seeing right now is significantly smaller than what we saw an hour ago, 2 hours ago. This now started 3.5 hours ago, and crews have been working diligently to get these flames under control. And regarding air quality concerns, again, EPA says that they have these handheld monitors on the ground in which they are not, there's been no detections of any action levels. And I think that we're going to continue asking that question. Okay, where are we at with those readings? Do people need to be concerned? What kind of fumes are still in the air even after this fire gets put out?
Yeah, one of the other questions that was asked during that news conference, you know, we've seen all that water that's being poured onto the flames there and kind of mixing with whatever's burning. What's happening with water quality? County says they're in the process of trying to gather that information as well. So that's sort of the other side of this equation. The other piece to the puzzle is water quality, because a lot of water has been used today to get this fire under control, which again is not completely out. A fire is still actively burning, as you can see there on the right side of your screen. You see where that smoke is? That's the unit that is still on fire. That's according to the spokesperson from the Harris County Fire Marshal's office. She couldn't really give us a timetable as to when that fire will be out, but it was her belief that it should be out sometime soon as they continue to work with Chemco to try and find out what types of dry chemicals were being stored in that warehouse that also caught fire. Yeah, the dry chemicals have a big question mark by it. We do know that isobutylene is what is burning and what caused this fire. And we know it's a gasoline additive. It's a colorless gas. As far as long-term effects, we were talking with a University of Houston chemical professor saying that the long-term effects, there really shouldn't be any. But the wild card question is, with this isobutylene burning, what is it mixed with? And what are these solid goods, these combustible chemicals, dry combustible chemicals that it's burning with? And that's what we're waiting to hear, because that's the question mark. That's the concern right now, is what other fumes are coming out of this. Right. I mean, and if you get that stuff in your eyes or on your skin, I mean, it's an irritant. Sure. You know, and we heard from our Taisha Walker, and this was a couple of hours ago when that fire was blowing and going, and she had even said that, you know, she could feel, you know, her eyes were burning a little bit. Want to pass along a new tweet now from Kipp. Shelter in place at the Kipp Northeast campus has been lifted. We will continue to closely monitor advisories from Harris County to make sure we have the most up-to-date information related to this matter so that our students and campus remains safe. So again, as we've been telling you, a lot of these districts and just educators in general, anybody that's got, you know, students and faculty, you know, in their care, are paying very close attention to the situation that's developed throughout the day and what authorities are saying now, and then they're acting accordingly. And Andy, we talked about this prior, but we do know that this is not the first time that Chemco has had issues with a situation like this. Back in December of 2010, Chemco had a similar situation with a fire in which 3 employees were hurt. And again, we're seeing something similar today with a little bit more of a tragic outcome in which 1 employee has been confirmed dead. 2 others are at a nearby hospital receiving treatment, and we're told that they are in critical condition. And in addition to that, just as recently as 2017, dealing with a lawsuit. That's right. That lawsuit stemming from a complaint that was sent to Harris County Pollution Control in 2016. There was some kind of black residue, some kind of like black gunk or goo that was spotted in a creek downstream from the plant. So Harris County Pollution Control initiated an investigation. A lawsuit was filed a year later in 2017, accusing the company of not following the law in terms of air and water emissions. The investigator who went out there from Harris County Pollution Control, according to the paperwork, she ended up with some kind of orange knot on the back of her neck when all of the work was done out there, and complained that she wasn't feeling well. And as soon as we continue to follow this, we know that our Channel 2 Investigates will be looking further into this company. And this, of course, comes on the heels of the ITC storage facility chemical fire just a few weeks ago. And that investigation is still ongoing. So this comes as investigators are looking into that. And now we have a new situation out in Crosby that they're looking at. Yeah, and that goes to what Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo said during that joint news conference. One of the first things that she said was, this is disturbing. I mean, this is problematic in the wake of the ITC tank farm fire. So, you know, she recognizes that the 2 incidents, albeit there's no connection, but they happen fairly close together. You know, people are a little jittery, a little on edge, you know, when they look up in the sky in the middle of the day and see another huge plume of, you know, choking thick black smoke. Specifically because with the ITC fire, it wasn't just one plume of smoke. Once that was put out, then it reignited.
and it happened a few times. And so you can never feel too comfortable going, okay, it's out, we're good. And especially with the air quality concerns, that's really top of mind for folks. When's the fire going to be out? What is burning? What are the fumes that are coming off of that? And what do we need to do? And we do know that shelter in place is still in effect for residents living within a 1 mile radius of Crosby, out of an abundance of caution as they continue to work to put this fire out. And air quality concerns, we understand. We understand, especially following the ITC fire. And the EPA, we just heard from the EPA saying that they have crews in the air and on the ground with no detectable, actionable detections to pass along. So they're saying, hey, things are fine right now. We're going to continue monitoring this very closely and report in real time these readings. And of course, that's what folks who've been watching this story develop throughout the day care about most is the air that I'm breathing safe as a result of what's taking place at Chemco today. That's what people care about, their air quality. I want to go to our Sally Mamdouh right now. She is live at Memorial Hermann Hospital. Sally, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Andy. And we now, we've reported, as you guys were talking about the ITC, how huge of a story that was. But during that story, we didn't have any fatalities. This time around, there is a fatality. Authorities do tell us, as you guys have been reporting all day today, that already one person has been killed when this plant fire started and several others injured. Now, those were injured have now been taken to the hospital. We know that the victims were airlifted to a nearby hospital, and we believe that the victims have been taken right here to Memorial Hermann. Now, we're still waiting to learn on the condition of at least 2 victims. I put in a call with the hospital officials, waiting to learn from them on exactly what their conditions are, if they're in critical, stable condition. That is all information we are still waiting to hear. But the tragedy out here there are victims. Some of them have been transported to the hospital. One person lost their lives, and we still don't know, obviously, the identity or how they lost their lives, but we know that this tragedy involves several victims now. We're still waiting to hear if there are more victims. As of right now, the plant released a statement earlier talking about those injuries and talking about how some of their employees have been injured, but we don't know the number. We just know that one person died and 2 people we know have been injured, but we don't know if there is more out there. And that's what we've been out here trying to figure out for you, is to get more information on the number of casualties here and to get more information on their condition. And as soon as we have that information, we'll make sure to bring it to you. But certainly a tragedy to report on today, that this time around this plant fire claimed at least 1 life. For now, we're live from Memorial Hermann. Sally Mamdouh, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
Sally, thank you. 2:36 here on Tuesday. You are looking at a live picture right now from my apologies. This is video earlier from Sky 2 of the Chemco chemical plant in Crosby, where an explosion and fire occurred just around 11 o'clock this morning. A transfer line ignited, causing an explosion and fire to a tank that contained isobutylene. Now, isobutylene is a colorless gas. It has a petroleum-like odor. It's extremely flammable. And in terms of the potential health hazards, dizziness, it can cause unconsciousness in some cases if you breathe it in. If it gets in your eyes or on your skin, it can be extremely irritating. In liquid form, it can cause frostbite. What we're trying to find out now, the chemicals stored inside of a warehouse adjacent to that tank that exploded and caught fire. That warehouse also caught fire. Dry chemicals, according to a spokesperson from the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, are being stored inside of that warehouse. They're burning dry combustibles, but authorities have no idea what those chemicals are. They're working on getting a complete list right now from Chemco.
And you know what comes into play here? Lauren Freeman with you now. We give Christina a bit of a break, but what also comes into play here now when you start talking about those dry chemicals and exactly what's burning and exactly what's in those tanks is these are, in many cases, proprietary blends. So it's not always just as easy as here we're going to give you our exact formula, because that's something that a lot of these companies hold very secret. Obviously, that's their commerce. That's how they make money. And so it's something that is a delicate balance, letting everyone know exactly what's in there, what could potentially be burning, but also these companies, understandably, are always mindful of protecting those proprietary blends. And so we know in the past, when we've covered explosions in West or different ones here in this area, we often see that come into play, especially early on. So we don't know if they're potentially dealing with that to an extent, but we know right now that Harris County is trying to get information as to exactly what those dry combustibles, those dry chemicals that caught fire, that are burning in that building near that transfer line that initially ignited. That's what started all of this. And we were told early on that that was isobutylene. So at least we know that chemical and that gas, but we're still waiting to hear for the rest. We know EPA, TCEQ monitoring the air there on the ground and in the area. During the ITC fire, Andy, you'll remember, there was a lot of talk if the numbers were real time, if they were coming out quickly enough, air quality numbers we're talking about here. And so it really appears that they have learned from that situation and now have people on the ground and monitors, handheld monitors on the ground in that area, trying to get real-time information and release those to the public, because it is unnerving. You know, you look at something like this and you go, oh, did ITC reignite? No, this is a separate one.
And a lot of those assets that were used during the ITC tank farm fire in Deer Park are now being moved. Right. They're being moved up to Northeast Harris County to the Chemco plant as they work to get the situation there put out. I mean, the fire is contained. It's contained to a unit right now, which is great news compared to what we saw from Sky 2 earlier this morning after that explosion. It looks dramatically different, better, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of finding out what's burning and making sure that they're able to keep that fire contained to that unit that's still on fire.
Well, because if you look there, it's clearly right in the middle of what appears to be numerous tanks surrounding it. So that in and of itself is somewhat concerning and worrying. We don't know exactly if or how they're able to shut off valves and hopefully prevent any other fires from starting there. We know safety is always paramount. So hopefully that's being taken care of right now. We know already one worker has been killed, 2 others critically injured in this. We were just talking to our Sally Mamdou there at the hospital, and we know that those 2 other workers were airlifted, and it's a serious situation, still is. And so we're just really monitoring it and trying to get all the information. We're working our phones in the newsroom, trying to get all we can for you.
And one of the questions that was asked during that news conference is the person who was killed. Where was that person when the explosion happened? They're not sure at this point. That's going to be a big part of this investigation, as we know, but they continue to actively monitor the scene there. We know that shelter in places, those orders were issued shortly after the explosion and the fire this morning. Crosby ISD, Sheldon ISD, Channelview ISD. Crosby ISD, we know, among the districts that has lifted its shelter in place order. So parents can now pick up their kids, and one of the things that Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said was, we're going to make sure that this dismissal process runs smoothly. We know there's a lot of frayed nerves. Parents are concerned and upset that we want to make sure this dismissal process runs smoothly, so we're going to have police personnel at all of the different campuses that have been impacted by this shelter in place.
We also want to let you know, just a quick programming note, Days of Our Lives, which usually airs in this time spot, will be aired at 2:33 a.m. in the morning. So if you're tuning in, wondering where Days of Our Lives is, it will still be airing at 2:33 a.m. coming up in the morning. We just wanted to let you know that quick programming note there as we kind of get back to business here.
And some of the other things that take place, just to give our viewers some kind of a background on what happens here at the Chemco plant. They manufacture and they process a lot of different types of chemicals and products. You know, there's a laundry list of them. Some include brake fluid products, antifreeze products, oil field products, and glycol products. Those are just some of the chemicals that are processed there at the facility. Are they burning? We don't know yet.
No.
We still don't know. I mean, that's kind of the wild card, the million-dollar question at this point. What exactly is being stored inside of that warehouse that caught on fire as a result of this explosion?
And this is a large facility, obviously, as you can see from this vantage point. It's owned by a large company as well, and so I know we've been in contact with the company. The company's been putting out statements throughout the day, trying to keep everyone updated on exactly what's happening here. And also we've been hearing from the county all day about how they're trying to get more information as well about exactly what's being released into the air. They're also monitoring not only air quality, but water quality in the area, because I know you guys have been talking several times in the last couple of hours about the lawsuit that happened in relation to this chemical company within the last couple of years. And that was a water quality issue, Andy.
That was a water quality issue. Going back to 2016, 3 years ago, Harris County Pollution Control received a complaint from someone that there was some kind of black goo or black gunk, black residue that was found in a creek downstream from the Chemco plant. So an investigation was initiated. When that investigation was complete, according to the paperwork that we obtained, the investigator who led that case, ended up with some kind of orange knot on her neck and stated that she wasn't feeling well. So this all precedes that lawsuit that was filed 2 years ago against the company. And this isn't the first time there's been an issue with an explosion there. You got to go back 9 years ago to December 2010. There was an explosion at that same plant and 3 workers were hurt.
Wow. So certainly we've been doing some homework trying to get some more information about this company and about this campus specifically there. As we see there, it is still continuing to burn at this point. There is still some smoke that is rising as well. It looks much better now than it did an hour ago or 2 hours before that. But still, we understand that they know that yes, something is burning. They don't know exactly what all is burning at this point. But the EPA and also the TECQ are there on the ground in the area monitoring air quality. We also know at this point they're telling us they have not detected any toxic levels in the air. So that is good for people living in that area. We also see that they're still putting water on not only the fire but nearby tanks as well. Presumably worried about volatile chemicals that could potentially be in those tanks as well, because we learned that from ITC that can happen where one fire spreads to another container or tank, what have you. And so we see that they're still trying to do that at this point.
Right, and isobutylene was the initial fuel source for this fire. It's extremely flammable. It's a colorless gas, has a petroleum-like odor, but there are certain health hazards associated with that. You know, we've run down the list throughout the course of the day. You know, they include, dizziness, drowsiness, loss of concentration. In some cases, if you get it in your eyes, it's an irritant. The same with your skin as well. We have heard from Chemco in a statement released a short while ago. John Foley, the president and CEO, and I'm just going to kind of sum up what he said. The company extending its thoughts and prayers to the family of the worker who was killed and the families of those who were injured, and also went on to apologize. The statement was an apology letter of sorts to its neighbors for any inconvenience that it may have caused its neighbors, and that the company continues to work with first responders to make sure that they get this fire put out.
Back to the isobutylene. So we're told it's a highly flammable, colorless gas with a faint petroleum-like odor. It's a gas at room temperature. And they are also telling us it can cause temporary incapacitation or injury. It burns easily, rapidly, completely vaporizes at atmospheric pressure and normal ambient temperature. Normally stable, but can become unstable at elevated temperatures and pressures. And so we know we had elevated temperatures in this case, at best.
And for a while there, that plume of smoke was shooting straight up in the air and staying off the ground. And, we've heard from meteorologists Eric Brate and Chief Meteorologist Frank Billingsley You know, that's best case scenario when, you know, in this type of a situation. For all intents and purposes, I mean, it's a bluebird day out there. I mean, it's just, the weather's
Beautiful.
gorgeous.
It is.
The winds are calm, which is great. So it's not blowing this stuff everywhere. It's not blowing this stuff back down to the ground. It's keeping it at a higher altitude, and the winds were relatively calm. At a point, winds were coming out of the northwest, but there weren't any gusts associated with that. And you could tell that from those images from Sky 2 that we've been showing here on our air throughout the day, and even from some of the cell phone video that one of our viewers had sent in. You know, you could see the neighborhood there in the distance, and that plume of smoke just
went straight up
into the air.
Right, it was. And this is live still here, Sky 2, so we still see some of, oh, I'm sorry, this was Sky 2 earlier, I apologize, where you could see that just as we were talking about, the plumes of black smoke rising there, and we're kind of taking a closer look there as they try and put some water, presumably on that fire, to try and get it out. But if you go back to, Andy, I know was talking about a little earlier, John Foley, the president and CEO of Kimco, issuing a statement about the fire, saying that there was an incident resulting in an ignition and fire today at the Kimco facility there in Crosby, that they were very saddened to confirm that there had been injuries and a fatality, and that the injured had been taken and transported for treatment. He went on to say, our hearts and prayers go out to the individuals involved, as well as first responders, employees, and also our community. And we know that the community really comes into play big time, especially in the days and the hours and the weeks that follow an event like this. We have areas around this facility closed down right now, roads closed down. We have people worrying about air quality, water quality. And so as the county and different agencies continue to monitor that, we know people all around this plant and this facility become worried about that, and that becomes a big issue in the coming days. And we hope that the fire is able to be extinguished quickly and it stays out. But that's another big I don't know that we have in this situation.
Right, a lot of moving pieces to this. I mean, that's a great point. And to compare it with what we saw at ITC, they got the fire under control. They eventually snuffed that fire out. In the aftermath, there were still issues with vapors.
Right.
That became a different part of the story. That was an added layer that people were dealing with. Water quality concerns, also a concern for people, an issue for people. So, you know, once they do get that fire put out, once they get an idea of what types of chemicals they're dealing with, there has to be some kind of effort to make sure that if vapors are coming off of that unit that is on fire, that there's some effort to contain that, which that's what these first responders do. And certainly that's, you know, the company's responsibility to make sure that it continues to be safe.
And continues to be a good neighbor, because we know these facilities do offer jobs to people in the area, but certainly have to maintain safety. All right, we want to bring in Scott Davis with Crosby ISD. He's joining us on the phone right now. So, Scott, let me ask you this, because I know that there was a shelter in place a little bit earlier. That's since been lifted, but you guys are pretty much back to normal. Is that fair to say at this point?
Yes, ma'am. We are actually back to normal. If you can call normal, we're all going home.
Right.
It's been a long day.
I bet. Talk to me about the kids and the teachers and what have you today. Was this something that was super concerning to them?
Absolutely. Obviously, you know, being this close to the actual explosion site, you said it. I've caught bits and pieces on your reporting. I thought someone ran into the building. It shook everything, but very quickly, all of our law enforcement and emergency responders, it was literally seconds before people started calling. So, you know, living in this part of the world is a great blessing, and it also comes with a lot of responsibility. And so I'm really proud of the way our people remain prepared, because they put those actions into place very quickly to enact our shelter-in-place orders and, you know, put tape around doors and windows and seal those things off. And our teachers and kids honestly moved around inside the building somewhat normally this afternoon. And now we're in the process of sending them home.
And you said the building shook when that initial explosion happened. How far away from the facility are you?
Not far enough. I think it's probably, what do you think, 2 miles, 3 miles? It may be 2 to 3 miles from the ground zero, as it were.
And were you able to smell anything? Are you guys noticing anything in the air at this point? Okay.
No, ma'am. Well, and part of sheltering in place, we did go outside a couple times, but once we enacted our shelter in place, it's, prudence demands that we do that as well. So we taped up and we remained inside, obviously turned off all of our HVAC units district-wide just to be very safe during the process of getting it under control.
Let me ask you this, because you guys are so close to this facility, do you have a protocol, I guess, that was set up beforehand about what to do? You mentioned taping up doors and windows and what have you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. You can ask any superintendent in the state. We all got emergency operations plans, and depending on some of the potential issues that are unique to different areas, us being around a lot of industry, chemicals and oil, we identify that really much area-wide as a potential threat, and so we have specific plans and protocol in place for those incidents.
Well, makes perfect sense.
Scott, it's Bill Maessa. These shelter-in-place orders are slowly being lifted, schools being released, as is yours, and we're glad that all that happened is at least ending well for your students, and that parents and students' concerns have been put to rest. We appreciate your joining us very much, Scott Davis.
Well, I appreciate your coverage this afternoon. I thank you for having me on. I apologize I couldn't do so earlier. We were a hair busy with emergency operations, but I want to thank all of our first responders who were there in just a skinny minute and doing amazing work. I'm very sorry for the tragedy that we're experiencing locally here today, but I'm very thankful for the people that run toward it. And anyway, thank you all for your coverage.
And
very well said.
Yes,
thank
Scott,
you,
thank you.
Also joining us on the telephone right now is County Commissioner Adrian Garcia. Commissioner Garcia, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
We know that the county's been watching this very closely. Can you tell us what you've been able to learn so far as this appears to be improving the situation?
Well, we're grateful that it does seem to be improving, but however, this is still an active scene, so we will not stand down until we have full confirmation that this event is over. But let me start on the sadder note, if you will, Bill and Lauren, and that is that a loss of life has occurred, and there's 2 other people that we know of that are at the hospital fighting for their lives, and we want to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. They're likely constituents and residents of Precinct 2, and so my heart goes out to them. I've always been talking about the ITC event and the aspect that as bad as it was, there was no loss of life in that event. Unfortunately, we're not able to say this about the Kimco one. So we're still learning. We understand that isobutylene is the chemical that is principally burning, but to the concerns that I had about ITC, we believe that we still have some chemicals at the Kimco plant that we do not know what they are. And so we're working to get that information to this point to make sure that we're fully transparent and understand what we're up against. I am grateful at the very least that the CEO has released a statement, but I am looking forward to him facing your cameras and answering questions to your reporters and to the public. And I'm grateful to my staff who's been working shoulder to shoulder with the first responders, doing everything we can as a precinct to support the response and doing all that we can to keep the community safe. So this still is a very active, but I'll close on this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you got. We had ExxonMobil lead the charge, and then we had ITC, and now we've had this one. It's why you're having to talk to me, unfortunately, over the phone and not in person, because I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. In fact, this morning, before I got news of the Kimco event, I was speaking to EPA, asking for their support and their participation with me as I meet with industry and chemical leaders this Friday, looking for solutions, looking for ways to prevent these events. And so obviously this meeting Friday will be even much more important than it was a week ago. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you guys got.
Well, we wonder if, even from the distance of Washington, D.C., from what you've heard and learned about the response and about the monitoring of the air, if you're satisfied with what you've heard about these things.
Well, from my staff has been keeping me posted, and look, I'm grateful that EPA had a plane up in the air today, unlike ITC event when it was a day or two later, and I'm very excited to feel like the fire is contained, but we still don't know the full extent of that as of yet. But we're not getting the same impression that we had from the ITC event, and obviously the sheriff was on site, the county judge was on site, providing us leadership to this event. So at this point, it seems like things were working a lot better than they were during ITC, and I hope my frustration expressed during the ITC event provided some motivation for them to do better this time around.
As you mentioned, the EPA did have a plane in the air monitoring the air quality. We did not see that in the ITC event. Do you feel, Commissioner Garcia, that the EPA response is in any way reflective of what was lacking during the ITC event?
Well, look, the meeting this morning with EPA was a little tension-filled. Let me just say that. But I made both my concerns heard and my interest expressed to be both a partner in with them to do all we can to support both the community and industry. We obviously recognize that they're an integral partner and part of our economy, and we respect that. However, I am still very concerned, Bill and Lauren, and to your viewers, that CCQ has found numerous violations at this location as well, just like we learned after the fact at ITC. But more concerning, at least on this side, is that there's been a couple of events where CCQ has cited Kimco, but did not issue any fines or penalties. I want some answers to that. I don't understand it. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have room to grow to deal with this much more responsibly, much more comprehensively, not alienating anyone, but just recognizing the fact that we got neighbors, we are neighbors, and we ought to treat ourselves as good neighbors to each other. And so that's part of the work that I'm looking forward to doing on Friday.
Let me ask you this. The delay in getting the information as far as what's in the building containing the dry chemicals that also caught fire, that we know the fire spread from that transfer line to that building. Do I guess proprietary issues come into play there, where the company wants to protect their proprietary blends and information?
Look, probably better than anyone immediately involved with this event, having been the city council member who was the chair of the Homeland and Public Safety Committee, and then being the sheriff, I understand the need to protect the information about these chemicals. However, the minute an event like this begins, that information should be free-flowing to the first responders, if to anybody else. And so, like the ITC event that we learned much later about benzene and naphtha and some of the other chemicals, xylene, we still don't know this information right now, and we're into a multiple hour of this event, and that should not be the case. Mm-hmm. So these are issues that I'm going to be putting on the table on Friday, and looking forward to work in a collaborative and cooperative manner with industry so that we can do a much better job to the people who depend on us the most, and that is the neighbors to the industry.
Commissioner Garcia, you mentioned that at the meeting today, it was animated at the very least with the EPA. I know you were talking to them about prevention and response. Prevention seems to be your priority here as concerns regulatory agencies, correct?
Well, actually, it's twofold, Bill. It's not only prevention, and obviously prevention is the priority, but it is also enforcement. And I want to know, what is the EPA's role from a federal level when now we're seeing that TCEQ may not be using their full authority, and in fact, with KIMCO, the Harris County Attorney's Office is got several actions pending against KIMCO that are currently in work. So, if we can't count on the state to be as strong as they need to be and being as close as they are to our particular jurisdiction, then I want to know, what is the EPA's role? You know, I came in as the sheriff to a sheriff's office that had been under a Department of Justice investigation, and no law enforcement leader wants to have that kind of situation happen. But if the Department of Justice is able to do that from a federal standpoint, then why can EPA not do the same?
Let me ask you this, because I've wondered this over the years as we have covered events similar to this. Do these companies have to file some sort of paperwork or forms with the EPA or with some other agency giving them, I guess, some sort of guideline as to what most of their chemicals are? Because it so affects what first responders do when they first get to an event like this. In other words, if it's one certain chemical, they can't put water on it and they have to put foam on it. Or if it's a different chemical, they can't put foam on it, they have to put water on it, those type things.
Well, I'll tell you that I don't know the answer to that. However, I've just got to assume that there is some degree of coordination, for lack of better words, with EPA on these matters. And as I said earlier, probably on a very valid point of homeland security concerns. However, you know, that goes out when the homeland of our neighbors is at risk. And at that particular point, our first responders should be the ones most empowered to deal with this event. The firefighters should be walking into that event, responding to that event, and somebody should be handing over a list saying, this is what's on site, be ready, make sure that your hazmat is prepared. That should be happening simultaneously with the response to the event. It shouldn't be happening after they're there on site, already executing their operations, and still not knowing what they're up against.
As you mentioned, Commissioner Garcia, these ship channel industries are an integral part of the Houston area economy, but they are also a very important part of the national economy as well. The nation benefits from the petrochemicals that are produced here and the products that are produced from them, but we're the ones who live with these industries right here in our backyard, so to speak, and with the danger that that potentially comes from this, as we see now and as we've seen recently. So it's very understandable why our city and county leaders should be demanding a great deal more transparency and a lot more cooperation from the regulatory agencies.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Bill. And I'll just tell you again, from my experience, when I became the sheriff, I inherited the Ship Channel Security District. And it was an entity designed for the right reasons to protect our industry against specifically man-made events that could use the industry against our homeland. I gave a lot of resources. I gave a lot of attention. People would always ask me as a sheriff, what keeps you up at night? And I always said, it's an attack or disruption at the Port of Houston, at the Ship Channel, in relation to the industry. So we have worked tirelessly here to protect the industry. I think it's time for all interested parties to come together to protect the community as well. We give a lot of interest. Obviously, as you said, they provide a third of the national economy with all of the jet fuel, oil, and gas that they produce and maintain here. That's a third of our national economy, and that's to be respected and commended. and we want to continue to do so. However, there's also a obligation to all of the parties involved, federal, state, and local, to work together to ensure that that part of our economy is, above all, protected, and that they, too, are a responsible partner to the local community.
Commissioner Garcia, we want to thank you very much for visiting with us this afternoon by telephone from Washington, D.C., where you have been visiting with the EPA. We know, as you said, that you would prefer, as we would, that this happened on camera, and we know that you would be visiting with us on camera were it not for the fact that you were at this distance. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, guys, and thank you for keeping our viewers informed.
And we do have some new information to pass along right now. You know, we told you earlier that HISD had canceled a lot of outdoor activities tonight in the north and east parts of town. And so here is what we're hearing from HISD. Baseball games at Cowart Stadium have been canceled. The soccer playoff match at Furr High School versus Stafford will be relocated to Dyer Stadium. Also, we told you about this earlier, programming note, but we want to reiterate it. Days of Our Lives will re-air at 2:33 a.m. this morning. So if you tuned in and were not able to see that, that's when you will be able to watch Days of Our Lives.
Just to briefly recap what the situation is right at this point, the shelter-in-place orders are slowly being lifted, if not lifted altogether. The schools in the area, the three that had been locked down, sheltered in place, a lot of concern from parents about their students, are now being allowed to pick up their kids and go on home. So this is ramping down, and that's the good news. Of course, there is the terrible tragedy of the loss of life here. One person was killed. 2 others were flown by helicopter to Houston hospitals. We don't know their conditions yet. We know that this event began as a leak and then an explosion of a chemical called isobutylene. We know that your main concern, sitting at home, is the air you're breathing. We don't know much about how dangerous the other chemicals might have been that burned as a result of this explosion. But the isobutylene itself that caused it, which, by the way, is used in the production of high-octane aircraft fuel, much like the type of fuel that was used in the Vietnam War in a weapon called Napalm, which was a mixture of high-octane gasoline with a gel-like substance, not only to cause burns to the enemy, but also to deprive them of oxygen in their tunnels and caves, because isobutylene, once it ignites, is a voracious consumer of oxygen. And asphyxiation is the immediate danger from it if you're not burned from it right away. It sucks so much oxygen out of the air that people can asphyxiate from it, and that was the purpose, the secondary purpose of napalm used in the Vietnam War.
Fascinating. I didn't realize that. We know the EPA and the TCEQ are there on site, on the ground, near this facility with handheld air monitors right now. We understand that they have not detected at this point any toxic levels of isobutylene in the air. We're still waiting to find out exactly what is burning in the nearby building that also ignited, that we were told contained dry combustibles, dry chemicals. So we're still trying to find out exactly what those are.
And as Commissioner Garcia was pointing out, the EPA did put an airplane on station to monitor. It's an airplane that monitors air levels of contaminants. And I'm going to presume here, Lauren, that if there had been anything that was extremely dangerous, they would have notified us so that we could notify folks who live around there. So we're still waiting to hear from what was collected by that aircraft, which is a very valuable asset in a situation like this.
No question, no question. I think the other thing that comes into play here as well is that I think there's a possibility, and from what we have heard, that the company doesn't know exactly what all is burning and where at this point. As you can see, I mean, it's just full of black smoke. Earlier, it was full of flames as well. And so I think it's simply hard for them as well to know exactly what all is burning. But we do know that, at least from what they've told us, a building containing dry chemicals was on fire at one point.
In the ITC incident of a week ago, there was a secondary event. that happened a day later. So we don't know if the concern there on the ground at that plant is that they have to watch out for a secondary explosion, something else that may evolve from this initial situation. But we do know that the full resources of the city and county and the ship channel industry itself, which has a disaster response team, are focused on making sure that this situation is contained.
And I mean, talk about jumping from one frying pan to the next. I mean, they literally went from the ITC facility fire that basically just stopped being a story a few days ago to now this. And this one has proven to be deadly already. We know of at least one employee that was killed there in the initial explosion, 2 others critically injured. They were rushed via air flight to hospitals in the area where they are being treated medically right now. We know that shelters in place were placed for school districts in the area, Crosby, Channelview, just all of those around in there, and that has since been lifted. And so those school districts went ahead and dismissed students as usual. But we also know that they had some law enforcement there on site to help facilitate that because there were a lot of nerves involved in this. We know that parents were very concerned and wanted to quickly get there to pick up their children today.
From my perspective, reporting news here in Houston for the past 46 years, these incidents that happened on the ship channel, you know, with some regularity, is part of, you know, it's the other part of living with a great economy here. This is a very, very dangerous and volatile, potentially volatile situation living near these ship channel industries. There have been much bigger disasters on the ship channel going back even before I got here, and in which dozens of people have been killed. So this is, if you look at it in that perspective, is not as bad. But what we have had since Harvey, when, and please help me think of the name of the plant, although it wasn't the same situation.
Arkema.
Arkema, yes. We've now had, you know, 3 situations in a fairly
short
compressed amount of time. And so the focus is back on the ship channel industries, and as it should be, because this is a danger we live with.
It absolutely is a danger, and you were just talking about over the 46 years you've been covering them. It does seem when we have these events now, though, that if there are casualties, in many cases there aren't, but there are fewer. Because you were talking about, I mean, you've covered some over the years where there were dozens of people who were killed.
Yes. I'm told that Brittany Jeffers, one of our many crews and assets working this story, is standing by with a report. Brittany?
Yeah, Bill, we just got to town. As we were driving here, we could see the smoke in the air. But right now we are in a community here where you can see Harris County Sheriff's Office has a car here blocking off the road. Just up the road, you can see some of the emergency crews up there, firefighters as well. And I want you to take a look now above the tree line. This is from our vantage point, what we can see of this fire out here. Some smoke in the area. You can smell it in the air as well. Of course, as we've been reporting, this has been raging since 11 o'clock this morning. Harris County Sheriff's Office says this started after an explosion at the chemical plant. Tragically, 1 person died. 2 others, as we have reported, were life-flighted. And Sheriff Ed Gonzalez saying preliminary information showing that this was isobutylene that started this and that is still burning. Now, as I mentioned, we just got here to the area, but we have already seen this impacting a lot of people who live out here. Many of the roads in the area are blocked off. We've seen people, some of the Crosby school districts out there picking up their children from school. As we reported, some of these school districts asking the students and staff to shelter in place. Of course, some of those have already been lifted, but from our vantage point, we can still see right now emergency crews coming and going from this road here that is still blocked off. Again, we are still seeing a little bit of smoke above the tree line, but we just got out here. There is a media staging area. We're told there's supposed to be updates later on in the day. We'll stay out here. We'll be bringing you more information just as soon as we learn more. Bill, back to you.
Nice job, Brittany. We'll let you get to reporting here for our newscast at 4, 5, and 6 o'clock. Situation improving out there right now. The Harris County Fire Marshal has said that the shelter in place is lifted now. Kids are going home from school. Situation seems to be abating, we did have a loss of life, 1 person dead, 2 injured.
Yes, so we will continue to watch this story and get much more information for you. We'll have the very latest coming up at 4 o'clock. In the meantime, we want to return you back to programming to Dr. Phil.
This has been a breaking news alert from KPRC Channel 2. For continuing coverage, log on to clicktohouston.com.